righty. Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside and out. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today we have a special episode. We've been working up to this moment for months, and we're going to make our bracket selections today, and we have a whole host of folks. Caleb Slayton is back from his concussion. Drew Barton is on the road with his women's Sweet 16 team, NIA. They've advanced the Sweet 16, and you're in Iowa?
Yeah, I'm in Sioux City, Iowa. So we flew it was a bit of a long trip. We flew from SFO, so from San Francisco to Chicago. So past Sioux City, from Chicago back to Omaha. From Omaha, drove about an hour and a half. And now we are officially in Sioux City, Iowa for the final 16 teams to duke it out for a red banner.
All at that location?
Yeah, everything's gonna be at one location. So they go from 16 to finals is all in the same spot.
And Cam Reel is back. We haven't seen Cam, I think, since Christmas. Cam, you've had eye injuries, back injuries, and apparently you're going through chemotherapy because it doesn't seem like you have any hair. What's going on?
Yeah, it's all going on. Not much, man. I'm just chilling. I've been coaching a lot of basketball, hanging out, nothing too new.
Okay. And I just got back from I don't even know where to begin. I went to the Big East tournament and the Ivy League tournament last week. My back about the week before really started acting up so bad that it was very difficult for me to walk. And everybody told me not to go, don't go. But I went and kind of survived the first the Thursday's games, 4 games, two during the day, 2 in the evening. Kind of survived them on adrenaline. But then Friday night or Thursday night, I was just by the end of the day, I was in so much pain that I couldn't make it for the semifinals. I laid in bed. Are you ready for this? I laid in a hotel bed for 24 hours straight, and I barely could move. And all I had in the hotel room was tap water. There's like no food, but like I couldn't even, it was so painful. I didn't even want to call for food or do anything like that. So I didn't eat for like 36 hours. All I had was tap water. But then I went to the Ivy on Saturday for their Final Four, and that was so painful. But yeah, and I think I may have pissed Mitch Henderson off, Princeton's coach, in the process. I was just like so out of it, like the pain was just overwhelming. I'm like taking 3 different kinds of drugs to kind of calm it down, none of which are working. But I just felt like I wasn't on top of my game, and I think I pissed him off, obviously unintentionally, after they lost to Brown, which was a huge upset last week. But anyway, my apologies to Princeton if I did upset anyone. I personally didn't lose the game, so don't scapegoat me because I didn't ask a question just so. But anyway, yeah, I met a lot of people. One of them, we have 2 people in the waiting room. Wow. Here we go. And one of the people, I met a ton of people, and talked to a bunch of players, got to say hello to Baylor Shireman. And I met one of the people I met was Josh Simon, who's joining us. And Josh runs College Basketball Corner. So, Josh, introduce yourself to the gang.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Met Rich at the Ivy League tournament, and I love this sport. I've been watching games my whole life, and especially the last couple of years, really to the exclusion of all other sports. I love every aspect of it. I love the small conferences. I love kind of the games in February. I love the games in December in the non-conference when teams are figuring things out. I just love the sport, and I feel like there's a lot of great teams out there, great players that really kind of don't get showcased on a national level and don't get kind of the casual fans attention, and just try to bring as much of that kind of enthusiasm for the sport out there to as many people as I can.
It's kind of what we do as well. You know, we kind of focus on the prospects that aren't so much on people aren't talking about, except for maybe in their local areas, and bring them to light. All right, so we're going to move on, and what we're going to do today is kind of going to be a special format, as I said, and we're just basically going to pick a collective bracket, and it's going to be majority rules. Now, if there is a tie, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us, so there's probably shouldn't be a tie, but if some reason someone says, I don't know, you guys make up your mind, we're going to, if there would be a tie, we're going to advance the higher seed, meaning the underdog. So like higher in number, not higher in rank. So we did this last year. We came up with a pretty good bracket. I suggest you guys kind of go for it here, because typically in this type of format where majority rules, chalk is going to really kind of prevail. So unless we take some chances. So, and we'll do it in a rotating, we'll start off in a rotating system, and Josh, we're going to look at, we're going to start in the East, and we got UConn versus Stetson. Who you got?
Listen, I love the ASUN this year, and it was a really fun conference, and it's really tempting to say Stetson, but I mean, at their best, UConn is the best team in the country, in my opinion. So I got to take UConn there.
All right. Anyone differ with Josh? All right.
Nope.
So we will advance UConn. By the way, where are these? The bracket I have doesn't have the location. So where is UConn? Where is that game?
That game is in Brooklyn as well, so that's going to be probably a pretty favorable crowd for the Huskies.
Yeah, they had a good crowd at the Big East. So the 8-9 matchup, is that also? I assume that's also in Brooklyn.
Yes. Yep.
All right, so we have Florida Atlantic as the 8 seed. Northwestern is the 9 seed. Who you got, Caleb?
I don't know if I was quite ready to go for the 8-9 right off the bat. I mean, I think I do have to go FAU. I really like the depth of their guards. I really like the experience that they have. I really think their offense is going to show up. And they played a slightly tougher schedule throughout the course of the season than Northwestern did. So even going back to just like, you've got obviously the experience coming back from everybody from last year. But even just the experience this year of playing together, of playing a little bit harder schedule, I think is going to favor them.
How about you, Cam?
Yeah, I'm sticking with FAU here. I think, when you get into tournament play, like Caleb was saying, with experience, it's key. I mean, granted, they did lose some guys from their run last year, but I just see them. I see them as the more solid all around team, and they can really put up some points too. I think when we get into tournament play, especially nowadays, if you can't put the ball in the basket, you're hampered in tournament play. I think 82.5 points game. I think that'll help them out against Northwestern for sure.
Alrighty. How about you, Drew?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Owls here. I think John L. Davis versus Boo Boo is gonna be an awesome matchup that a lot of people aren't talking about in terms of just like individual players. I think those are two of the more slept on guards in the country just because of where they play. But I'm gonna take FAU. I think, they definitely have some bad losses, but they also have some great wins. They're battle tested. They have a coach that's been very well regarded the last 2 years. I mean, people are talking about Dusty maybe even moving on to take one of these vacancies. So I'll take the Owls, but I think this is kind of the definition of an 8-9 game. This is two really solid teams, both led by a really, really strong player. We'll see what happens, but I'll take the Owls.
Yeah, obviously we advanced Florida Atlantic, but I'll just throw in Northwestern's banged up. They don't really have any depth. They still have some good shooters that can keep them in a game, but the depth is just hands down FAU. All right, so we'll move on. We'll lead off with Cam. We got the surprise UAB Blazers versus the 5 seed San Diego State Aztecs.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty easy pick for San Diego State for me. They're perennially a pretty solid defensive team, and it seems to be the standard this season as well. And again, like you said, Rich, UAB is a bit of a surprise. Granted they're coming in hot, but I think San Diego State's gonna have enough to elevate in this matchup. What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think, Josh?
It's funny. I really liked UAB's conference a lot this year, so I'm tempted to pick UAB there, just because I think San Diego State is good. They had a good season again, but this UAB team, I don't know. They kind of caught fire late. They played competitive ball throughout the year. If you look at their losses, nothing kind of blowout wise. I think in the non-conference, if I remember right, they played like a relatively competitive schedule non-conference. So there's something about that team. I kind of like them, so I'm going upset there.
All right, how about you, Caleb?
I'm going to stick with San Diego State. I can't believe nobody has talked about the All-American from San Diego State, Jadeveon Lee. Just an absolutely incredible season, and I remember him sitting on the bench at Ohio State a couple years ago, and now to see him be that All-American player and to see him grow over the last couple of seasons has been absolutely incredible. And I'm looking forward to him having a big tournament, kind of going out on top. Maybe not on top, but going out playing well. And yeah, I think San Diego State will win this one.
All right, Drew?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Aztecs. I think Caleb hit on the head. I think they have the best individual player in the game, and that goes a long ways in March. I've always believed that's an important thing. And if you want to talk about a team that had 0 bad losses this year, I think San Diego State qualifies. I mean, you could argue their worst loss was a very close one to UNLV, but UNLV proved to be one of those beat anybody on any given night kind of teams. We know what the Mountain West was, and even in their non-conference, they lost to BYU early. That's a good team. And they lost to Grand Canyon in a close one early. Again, a team that, we interviewed their best player in Grant Foster. We think highly of them. So played a competitive schedule, returning some serious firepower after a deep run. No bad losses, played a very competitive, non-conference as well for the most part. I'll take the Aztecs, but I think this is a good game.
All right. So we're going to
I think San Diego State had one of the 5 hardest strength of schedules in the country. So you really want to talk about being battle tested and not having a bad loss. Did they play a bad team? Just an insane strength of schedule. And I think you're really going to see that be beneficial for them here.
Yep. I have to favor San Diego State as well. I don't think they're as good as last year, though Ladie does give them kind of a different element. But to me, they don't make the Final Four without him last year. So, but anyway, so we advance San Diego State. We move on down to Auburn, 4 seed Auburn against 13 seed Yale, a team that Josh and I just got done watching. Where is that game, Drew?
Sorry, let me check. That game is going to be in Spokane, the promised land of my Zags.
Ah, interesting. Who you got, Drew?
I'm going to take Auburn. This entire quadrant is insane. I think UConn got dealt a very brutal hand here. You're the number 1 overall seed, and you have 4 of the Power 6 conference champions, and the 4 kind of expected ones in one bracket. It's pretty insane. I think this Auburn team is legit. Rich, you and I have talked about Janai Broom quite a bit this year. Ken Palm has them as a top 5 team, I think, or right outside the top 5. They're at 4. So, brutal schedule, All-American type player, played really well in the SEC tournament. I think that this is, to have them at a 4 seed, they're probably underseeded. There's a legitimate argument that they could have been a 2 seed. They could have maybe gotten as high as a 2. So I'm taking Auburn pretty confidently. I really like this team. I love their stud player. And I feel really bad that you're going to have to pick a couple really good teams. You're going to get stuck playing each other pretty early.
Yeah, it's such a bad draw because I could see Yale, like Princeton, advancing a round or two, but it's
Yeah.
just really not a good matchup for them. Um, their best player, Yale's best player, is Danny Wolf, but he's going to go up against Janai Broom. Just not a great matchup. What do you think, Cam?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Rich. I mean, for Yale to pull the upset here, you would need a godlike game from Danny Wolf. I think he's pretty by far their best player. Really versatile guy, but I think he's going to have a lot of trouble with Janai Broom, especially matching up athletically with that guy. I mean, Janai Broom's a freak,
Yeah.
and Danny Wolf's great, but he's gonna have a hard time.
If Yale had like blown Brown out in the championship game, and I probably might be a little more tempted to pick him, but Brown took them down to the last shot, and so anybody else have a comment about that game, or should we advance Auburn? All right, Auburn moves on. So now we have BYU against Duquesne. Surprised to see Duquesne there from the A10. They won the A10 tournament. Who are we starting off with? Let's see. Well, we could start off with me. And love their backcourt of Dede Grant and Jimmy Clark. But I just don't think they have enough overall, to keep up with BYU. Now, BYU, sometimes when their threes aren't hitting, they can lose, but I kind of have to, Duquesne was pretty much under the radar all year. I mean, they weren't a team that we saw coming. So they do have experience. They do have two nice guards, but yeah, I got to go with BYU. Yeah, what do you think, Josh?
I was gonna say I like BYU's guard too. Jackson Robinson, I could see having a pretty good game there, and I don't really think Duquesne has just the offense to kind of hang around and score. I think you're going to need to score points to win that game, and I don't see it. For them to win, they need to have guys kind of get hot, and I don't think that's a great recipe against a pretty well coached team. And you got a senior guard. I kind of like BYU there.
All right, Caleb.
I'll stick with BYU. I was doing some research earlier today, and like I think of all the teams in the field, Duquesne gives up more open threes per game than like any other team in the tournament. And as Josh was saying, like against a really well coached team that shoots well from the 3-point line, that hunts threes, that's a pretty bad matchup and a pretty bad recipe. And I don't see it going well for Duquesne.
Right. I gotta agree. All right, so now we have Illinois, the 3 seed against 14 seed Morehead State. And who you got, Josh?
I really wanted to go with Moorhead here because I've seen him play. I like Riley Minix a lot, and I think he's pretty dynamic. I think the tough part for them is if you can shut him down a little bit, which Illinois probably has the athleticism to do. It makes Moorhead's offense kind of tough to score. And I mean, even if Shannon doesn't have a great game, he'll probably score 18, 20. I just think that's a tough matchup for Moorhead. I got to take Illinois there.
What do you think, Caleb?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Josh said. I really want to pick Moorhead. I think Illinois does have some like inconsistencies, especially on offense, right? Like they basically haven't played with a point guard all year, and it hasn't been until the Big Ten tournament where they really leaned into like a spread pick and roll, Terrence Shannon playing the point. And I mean, obviously for his scoring, that's been like his run during the Big Ten tournament. I don't really see a lot of people talking about, but he went for over 30, I think, every game in the tournament. So it worked out really well for him, and I just think Illinois probably has too many bodies, too many big athletes to really throw at him. Even despite their inconsistencies, I don't think Moorhead quite has enough.
Yeah. The funny thing is, if you had flipped that Moorhead and Yale team, I think Yale beats Illinois.
Whoa. What do you think, Drew? We got two votes for Illinois so far.
Or
Again,
you can pick Yale.
This goes back to, I think, the comment I made earlier about this bracket just being this quadrant being insanely loaded. Shout out Riley Minix for being an NAI legend. I work for an NAI program right now. So to see him make that jump and get to the D1 level and be really effective, carry a team, win a conference championship is awesome. But I think Terrence Shannon is better than him. And then you start going to the list and go, Marcus Domask is really good and Coleman Hawkins is really good. And it's just like, okay, so I have one team.
Dane Danger.
Yeah, I'm just giving you like the three best guys, arguably. And it's like, those guys are better than your three guys. We're bigger, more athletic. They've, again, another team that's played a really tough schedule that has maybe only one loss. That's kind of they lost to Penn State by 1. And outside of that, you're looking at losses to like Purdue twice and Tennessee and Marquette. Like nobody's blaming you for those. So I think at the end of the day, this is just another team that could have easily been maybe snuck into a 2. They're a top 10 Ken Palm squad. I'm taking Illinois.
All right, so we move Illinois along. So we'll start off with Washington. Next game is 7 seed Washington versus 10 seed Drake. Where is that game, Drew?
That game is going to be out by me. That game, along with the next game we're going to do, is going to be in Omaha.
Omaha. So
Yep.
that should be favor Drake a little. Wow, interesting. Who you got, Cameron?
Yeah, I'm thinking Drake here personally. I think they're a superior shooting team in pretty much every way to Washington State. Washington State can go on some real cold streaks, and those cold streaks have a way of popping up when you get into tournament play. I'm gonna go with the hot shooting team. Come to think of it too, Washington State they really struggle from the free throw line as well. They got a couple guys that are sub 70. So I'm going with the upset here. I think this is probably our best prospect for an upset so far.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Josh?
This is actually one of the games that I'm the most excited about for the first round. I think this is going to be an awesome matchup. Washington State is a super well coached team. Like going back to last year, they kind of had been building momentum for a little bit here. So this is sort of a fun group. Jalen Wells can really play. Isaac Jones is nice. I like that team, but I'm with you. I think it's Drake in this one. This Drake team is really good, and even outside of DeVries, like they're well balanced. This is a super like just sound team. They have athleticism. They know how to get out and play. They like to run. This could be a game that ends up in like the 90s and just ends up super fun. So I'm stoked for this one. But I'm taking Drake.
2 votes for Drake so far. What do you say, Caleb?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it to Drake as well. I think even looking at some of my personal brackets, that's who I picked. Also, surprisingly, Drake played a harder strength of schedule than Washington did, Washington State, and it's not really comparable. Drake played the 48th hardest schedule, while Washington State played the 95th. So again, like some of the stuff we talked about with consistency on offense, with experience throughout the season, experience playing together. I really like what this Drake team has going for them, and I think their shooting is going to come in pretty clutch, like Cam was talking about.
All right, so Drake advances. So I'll start off with Iowa State, South Dakota State. We just saw Iowa State win the Big 12 tournament. They are, they do have some experience, but most of their key players are more younger. So I do worry about that a little, but not against South Dakota State. I just think Iowa State is so well balanced that this is not the type of team that's going to lose to South Dakota State. Even if they're not playing good offense, they're always going to bring it on the defense. So I like Iowa State here. How about you, Drew?
Yeah, I think again, I think Iowa State's just kind of the better team. Keyshawn Gilbert is like awesome. He's just fun to watch play. This whole team's fun to watch play because they're balanced. Like they don't have maybe the big college household name, at least not right now because they are on the younger side, but they've got 6, 7 guys, 8 guys that are all getting out there and contribute. Again, another team that apparently they were saying was the 8th overall seed. I don't know how that they viewed this team as the last 2 seed. This team, in my opinion, was vying for that last 1 seed. So again, This team is loaded. the youth could become a bit of an issue down the line, especially given that they're going to potentially run into their path could be they have to beat South Dakota, then Drake, then Illinois, and then UConn is kind of where we potentially could have them at. So that could become a problem. But as they stand, they're super fun to watch, super good team, super deep. I got to take Iowa State.
All right. Kim?
Yeah, I mean, this is just not a team that's going to get upset. I mean, we'll see how deep they can really go, but I mean, they just crushed the Big 12 tournament. I mean, they creamed Kansas State. They kind of squeaked it out. I mean, it's the score is a little bit more lopsided than the game really was, but handed it to Baylor and then absolutely creamed Houston in the final game. I mean, San Diego State oh my God, excuse me, South Dakota State. They don't really have a shot in this game. We all know that.
Right. All right, so we're going to move on to the second round of the Big East or the Eastern region, and so we have UConn versus Florida Atlantic. Who you got, Josh?
Boy, I like this is the spot where I feel like you said, Drew, just this region is just loaded because like UConn, they're sending through everybody, and like this could be a Final Four caliber game. FAU is a really good team. John L. Davis can ball. Like this team is not going to be intimidated by UConn. They can play with them. The problem is UConn's going to be playing that game at basically a home game for them. Their UConn is really good, and like this FAU team took Arizona to double OT, beat them, and hung 96 and can score. So I don't think that's really a problem, but UConn's not losing in the second round of this tournament. It's just kind of that simple, and I like it almost doesn't matter who they play. So I'm taking UConn there.
Caleb?
I mean, I've made like 10 brackets already, and I'm struggling to like legitimately pick anybody else but UConn. Honestly, like they're so good, they're so balanced, they're so deep. They bring like guys off the bench who haven't played in 2 weeks and suddenly are putting up 15 points in the Big East tournament. Like they're just really good. And I really don't think Florida Atlantic can play defense well enough for 40 minutes to hang with them. I don't know. Obviously, there's no betting lines yet, but like put me at like +8.5 or -8.5 for UConn. Like I think UConn's that good to win the second round game by pushing double digits.
I don't think it's going to be close. I think they're going to roll them. FAU really doesn't have a lot of height, and I think it's just won't be that close. So we move UConn along. All right, Drew. So we have what a matchup for a second round. We have 5 seed San Diego State versus 4 seed Auburn.
I mean, this is going to be super fun to watch. We're going to watch 2 All-American forwards go at it. In a lot of instances, I would pick San Diego State. I think they're probably the best. I mean, they're the best 5 seed in this tournament. And in any other quadrant, I think have Elite 8 upside. But I think really highly of this Auburn team. Again, they check a lot of, if not all, the boxes I want in March. Their guard play is a little bit suspect to me, but outside of that, again, you have a go-to player, you have a coach who's been there, who was just in a Final Four a couple years ago and has had great tournament success. You're athletic, you're long, you come from a battle-tested conference. I'm taking Auburn, but I think this game is super fun. I mean, give me Janai. This could be one of those ones where, in terms of individual battles, I mentioned Boo Buie versus John L. Davis for the big men in this tournament, or forwards. Janai Broome versus Jaden Ledee is going to be must-see TV, but I'm taking Auburn.
How about you, Kim?
Yeah, I gotta have a little SEC loyalty here. I'm a big fan of Jaden Ledee, but I think Auburn is just going to be a superior defensive force in this one. And I think just to harp on what Drew's saying with the guard play, it's a pretty classic Auburn pair of guards here. They can shoot you out of games at times, but when they get rolling, it's fun, right? So I'm going Auburn.
Josh?
I'm gonna go San Diego State there. I agree with everything that's been said. I feel like it'd just be a super fun game. Come down to guard play at the end of the day in that one. I think that just the play of the bigs would just be awesome anyways and balance out. And I think a guy like Lamont Butler, San Diego State, I could see having kind of a big game for them and just kind of going off. So I'd go San Diego State there and upset.
All right, Caleb.
As much as I would love to tie it and to send it to you, Rich, for the tiebreaker, I think I'm going to have to stick with Auburn. And surprisingly, I think it's the physicality of Auburn just up and down the roster. Like, I know San Diego State and Steve Fisher and those boys will play physical and they play tough, but Auburn just every position, and they're so deep. They go 8 or 9 guys deep. They've got 4 bigs that they can play. They've got big wings. The guards are so physical. The guards are just fun. Like, I know Cam talked about the classicness of the Auburn guards, and they can shoot you in a game and they can shoot you out of a game, and it's a lot of fun. And I just think at the end of the day, the physicality of this Auburn roster, from top to bottom, is going to win them this game.
Yeah,
they can kind of out San Diego State.
Yes.
A little bit, I think.
Yeah. They're bigger. And I just think the San Diego State's a little too reliant on Ladie for in a game like this. And Auburn has the bodies to throw at them. So I would have to agree. So we advance Auburn.
Even like when we were talking about San Diego State, Auburn, if you I went and looked at the other 4 seeds, and I think I'd pick San Diego State against every other 4 seed. It's the 1 4 seed I wouldn't pick them against.
100% agree.
All right, so we move on in the East, and now we have BYU versus Illinois. And where is that game being played?
That game is BYU versus Illinois. Well, it'll still be in Omaha.
Okay. So probably a little bit of advantage for Illinois. So what do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I was taking a look at BYU's non-conference to see, what did they do, kind of who did they play, and they played some decent teams that are competitive, and not a horrendous schedule, but it's nothing. I don't know, doesn't blow me away. Illinois, we talked about Illinois, they're athletic, they're good. I don't think BYU has the athleticism to hang with Illinois for 40 minutes, and it probably just comes down to that. So I'll probably take Illinois.
All right. What do you think of Cam?
Yeah, I struggled with this one for a while. I tend to be a fan of Illinois' style of play. I think, and I think this year with Terrence Shannon, I think he's really elevated their game, because I think in the past they've struggled to score, or maybe haven't had that one guy that they could throw it to. I think ultimately I'm going to stick with Illinois here. BYU, I think, just to harp on Josh, I think if they were matched up with a little bit less athletic team, they're a little bit more likely to pull the upset here. But I think Illinois has enough to really elevate them here.
Drew, we got 2 votes for Illinois so far.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the Illinois train here. I mean, I think all the points made about BYU and the matchup are valid. I also think BYU's style of play is one of those ones where it's boom or bust. I mean, they're gonna. This is the type of team that could win their first game by 20 because they shoot 44% as a team from 3, and in their second game, almost lose the game because they go and shoot 28% from 3, and that's how much offense they were so reliant on there. I mean, Fuchs is great inside, but he's more of a really solid big. He's not a take over a game, dump the ball into him and run your entire offense through him type big. He plays within the system, so I think Illinois is better for all the reasons the guys have mentioned, and I also think you couple that with BYU's potential to almost lose the game based on their style of play. I think Illinois is the pick here.
Every time I've watched BYU this year, they almost inevitably lose, which means even though they have a 6-8 quad record, quad 1 record, that probably means when they really face the best teams, because that's usually, when I'm going to tune in, they've come up short. So, or at least the teams with the most pro prospects, I should say, because those are the games I tend to watch. So Illinois got probably 3 pro prospects. So yeah. All right. So now we'll move on to Drake and Iowa State. Both should have a good representation in the crowd in Omaha. Who do you got, Caleb?
I'm going to stick with Iowa State. Oh man, if it wasn't for UConn, they would probably be my personal pet favorite to win the title. So definitely some bias there. I love the defense that they play with. I love the tempo that they play with. I love the physicality that they play with. Despite their youth, such a well-coached roster. Tamian Lipsey really is a great, for Iowa State to hit on Tamian Lipsey and the transfer that's now at Texas in back-to-back years, 2 great guards back-to-back years at Iowa State has been a lot of fun. I'm just going to have to stick with Iowa State. Really like their game.
All right. You mean Tyrese Hunter?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So we have 1 vote for Iowa State. What do you think of Josh?
I'm going Drake here. I really like this Drake team. Everyone on this team can pass the ball. It's a pretty dynamic offense. They played a pretty good kind of non-conference that I think prepared them for this. They played teams that were either in the tournament or competitive in their conferences. They have a series of guards that can all play. They can all get into passing lanes. Their bigs have pretty good hands. I think it's a well-coached team. The Valley was a really tough conference this year, and I felt like whoever came out of there was going to make a run. Bradley, I really liked, and they took care of them kind of no problem. So I go with Drake.
All right. Cam?
Yeah, I mean, I can see the outcome, the alternate universe where DeVries just has an out-of-body experience and shoots Drake, out of the game. But I think Iowa State is just so solid at every position. I think defensively, they're going to match up on the perimeter very well against Drake team that is pretty guard-oriented. And I don't see any way that Drake ultimately pulls the upset in my mind. I think Iowa State's just too all-around strong of a team. But I do see the alternate universe where, they get, they can't necessarily mount a comeback because they are pretty dependent on holding a lead as a team, style play-wise. But I'm taking Iowa State here for sure.
All right. Got 2-1 for Iowa State. What do you say, Drew?
This is probably the most cowardly quadrant I think I've ever picked in the history of me doing brackets. I just think so highly of the teams here. I've already spoken highly about all of them, and I will continue to do so. I think Iowa State is just that good. I believe that they have a very strong claim to that 1 seed that that people were fighting for. I think they're right in that mix. So I think this Iowa State team, it's funny, in my time watching them, they've gone from a team back when Georges Niang was there where it was offense, offense, offense. Then they shifted to a team that was defense, 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 and the offense couldn't keep up. And now I feel like this team, while the offense still isn't up to par where it was back in the early 2000 teens when Niang was there and I was in high school, the offense is good enough to hang with most teams. We've seen it that when they get going against an elite defense like Houston, they can put up buckets and they themselves can defend. So I'm kind of with Caleb. This is a team that in any other year, I'd be hard pressed to not have this team probably making a very deep run. But I will have them advancing here.
All right. So we move Iowa State along, and now we go up top, and we have UConn at Auburn. Where would that game be played, Drew?
So this bracket here doesn't have the Sweet 16.
I think it's Boston.
I think it's Boston though. Let me see if I can pull that. Let me pull up, see if I can find it. I do believe it's Boston for this one though.
Okay. And I'll start us off. And I don't like Auburn or San Diego State in this matchup because neither of them shoot the 3 very well. You need to be a well-balanced team. I'm not saying that Auburn won't give Connecticut a game. I just think ultimately their shooting deficiencies allows UConn to advance. And if it's in Boston, they will definitely have the home court advantage. What do you think, Caleb?
I'm gonna have to pick UConn. I really like their depth across the board. I think this is really where you're gonna see guys like Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer step up, and that like consistency and that leadership from those guard positions, and the inability of Auburn to cause turnovers, which they rely on so heavily, I think is going to keep UConn to advance here.
All right, Josh.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is I'm going UConn. It's with a team like Auburn, when you try to run too much of your offense through a big against UConn, they eat that up, and they take that away and they deny it and they force you to do something else. And I I think they could just make Auburn really uncomfortable. And for 40 minutes, to echo what Caleb said, it just the leadership of guys like Spencer just kind of step up there down the stretch, and I think they pull away.
All righty. So we advance UConn. Now we have Illinois, the 3rd seed, versus 2 seed Iowa State. I guess it doesn't really matter much where this game's going to be played because they're fairly close together anyway. But does anyone know where this region? We really should know this.
I'm trying to find. I can't find a bracket that has the Sweet 16. All the locations are ending out at the first 2 rounds, where it has them play. Like it has like the location. Like I know where the Sweet 16 cities are. Like, oh, here we go. Hold on, we're in the East, right?
Yep.
Yeah, this says East Regional. It just says Boston.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that all those games will be in Boston.
Nobody will have a home court. So what do you think, Cam? Illinois or Iowa State?
Yeah, I think it's Iowa State for me. I just think, with this Illinois team, I think they are going to be a little bit dependent on Terrence Shannon to carry the offense at times. And I think against a team like Iowa State that loves to defend at the point of attack, that's going to be a recipe for disaster, deep in the tournament like this. I think it's Iowa State going away for me. Wow.
Drew?
Yeah, I'm taking Iowa State. I like Illinois. I think Illinois, though, they kind of have their 3-headed monster that I mentioned earlier with Hawkins, Domask, and Shannon. They're really good. I just think this Iowa State team can attack you a few different ways. And every time I watch them play, I'm not necessarily blown away by one particular guy, but I'm just like, this team competes. They just play basketball the right way. They're energized all the time. Like when I've seen them play, there's never been like a letdown. Like they're in games, they compete. What they did in their tournament just kind of sticks in my mind. I mean, they literally took it to everybody. So I'm taking Iowa State, but this is going to probably be a hell of a game. And again, like we've mentioned with all of these Elite 8 or these Sweet 16, Elite 8 matchups, this bracket's going to be entertaining as hell.
Yeah, this is a great matchup, and I'm going to go with Illinois. I'm going to go with the experience. I agree that Iowa State's pressure defense could cause problems for Illinois, but at the same time, Domask is probably about 5'6", maybe 7 inches taller than Lipsy. So, if they do get it across half court, I could see Domask feasting in the post and then distributing from there. Also, this Iowa State team shoots less than 70% from the foul line. So if this game gets down to the wire, you throw that inexperience plus the inability to really knock down foul shots could be a recipe to lose. I'm going with the experience. I'm going with Illinois. Caleb?
Do I have to pick this one? Can I just watch the game? Yeah, it was a bad joke. I'm sorry. Oh man, I just like genuinely don't know. I think of all of the games, this is the one where like the quote unquote upset, I can see the path to it happening the easiest. Like I can envision a world where Damask and Shannon, their size just plays such a factor in the half court. The size of the bigs for Illinois with Dane Danger, Hawkins' ability to shoot from the outside, especially when he gets hot. Like I see that world so easily, and yet I can't pick against Iowa State. Up and down the roster, so good, so tough. It's like Houston with depth this year, honestly. Like Houston was probably my favorite team for most of the season to watch, just aesthetically, and then they lost, decided to their whole bench got hurt, and then Iowa State just hasn't. And it's waves and waves and waves, and this team's just on a mission right now, and I don't see Illinois standing in the way.
All right. So Iowa State moves on. So, Josh, we're down to UConn and Iowa State to get to the Final Four. Who you got?
I take UConn. I think as good as Illinois has, or as good as Iowa State. We will say Iowa State.
Yes.
Yeah.
Iowa State. As good as Iowa State is, it's UConn's depth. I mean, UConn is just as deep as Iowa State is, and they've been there before. It's kind of they've been there. In order to beat them, you really have to stop them defensively. I think Iowa State is good defensively. I think they can definitely bother them and make it a possession game. So I could see it being one of those 5-6 point games back and forth all game. At the end of the day, UConn has that championship experience. Iowa State doesn't. And I think in Boston, a home crowd, I just don't see them losing before the Final Four there. I think that's where Iowa State's run stops.
Right. Cam?
Yeah, I just think, if you're going to put together a team that can really compete with UConn, you have to, and not to say that he can't defend in space, but you have to take advantage of getting the big guy Klingon out against the perimeter. And I just don't think that Iowa State has the shooting to do that.
They don't.
Yeah, and I think beyond that, you're going to really struggle to score against UConn. I just don't see anybody really taking it to them until the Final Four, maybe. But yeah, I'm going UConn.
All right, Drew, we got 2 votes for UConn to make it to the Final Four.
Like I don't know, man. How do you bet against this team? I mean, at least in this situation, they're freaking good, man. I mean, to think that they had guys on this team that were literally like their 7th, 8th guy last year is mind-boggling. I really like Iowa State. They're kind of a team that I've fallen in love with ever since way back when, Rich, you kind of put them on the radar. I think before they were even ranked, you had mentioned like, oh, this team's young, they're good. But this UConn team, I mean, one of the reasons, and we'll get into this, there's a few other teams, but my favorite thing about this team, it boils down to there is a guy on that roster that can literally can fill any role that you would in situation need in a basketball game. Like, if you need somebody to kind of just take over dynamic on the ball, get out of my way, we've seen Newton do that this year. I mean, the Kansas game in Lawrence Fieldhouse sticks out to me. You need a guy to get a rebound, defend the rim, just go toe to toe with other bigs. There's not many guys in the country better than Klingon. You need someone to knock down a big 3. You have Caravan and Cam Spence. Like, they just, every box, every situation you could come up in a basketball game, they can like find a guy to do it and do it at a high level. They're super well coached. They're super well tested. Give me the Huskies.
I agree. I think if you laid both teams' rosters out and compared player, like their top 7 or 8 players, I bet you check the box for UConn and almost every position. So, all right. So we'll move on to the South, and we start off with 1 seed Houston versus Longwood. And I start us off, and I'm not picking Longwood. So there you go. Caleb?
I'll pick Houston.
Anybody else? Anybody? All right, so we're going to move Houston along. All right, now we have Now we have a real interesting one, and I'll stay with you, Caleb, since that wasn't really fun. We got an 8-9 matchup of Nebraska at Texas A&M. Yeah, this is interesting.
It's going to be a super fun game to watch the two clash of styles. Really, I think I'm going to have to go Texas A&M though. Maybe it's a little bit of an upset, but I really like their toughness up and down the roster, their physicality, especially some of the bigs, and I just really like their guards. And I think they've been playing really well. And I don't know. That's kind of just what I'm feeling. Yeah.
Can I ask where this game is being played?
Yes, give me 1 second to pull it back up. This game is being played in
It's Memphis.
Memphis.
Okay, so no huge advantage for anybody. Who you got,
Mississippi
Josh?
State for
Huh?
sure.
What's that?
Or sorry, Texas A&M. My bad.
Yeah.
I got Nebraska in this one. I'm usually more of a guard guy, but I really like the bigs. I like watching Nebraska's bigs a lot. I feel like Mast and Gary are nice players, and I think I think Alec gives kind of an energy to that team. I like that team. I'll admit I haven't seen a ton of A&M, but I feel like the best I could come up with for them was they're on a hot streak.
Yeah.
For me, that wasn't a good enough reason. I do like that Nebraska team. I like the way they play.
What do you think, Cam?
Yeah, I said the words SEC loyalty earlier, and I gotta take that back. I've learned, as a Tennessee fan, to fear, supporting teams that can't shoot the basketball.
Mhm.
And Texas A&M cannot shoot the basketball.
Every
well
once in a while, those guys will string it together and they'll beat somebody like Kentucky or Tennessee, but then
Totally.
they'll lose to, Tennessee Tech because they go 3 from 30 from the 3-point line.
And
Cam, are you saying that the Big Ten is better than the SEC?
No.
I would never say that. You know me.
I mean, that feels like the argument is here.
No, the argument is Texas A&M can't shoot.
Yeah, no, the argument is they can't shoot. I mean, Wade Taylor is gonna be the guy that really decides this for A&M, but I think, sometimes what you need to, advance in March Madness is to be on a hot streak, and Nebraska's on a hell of a hot streak. I'm gonna take Nebraska here.
All right, so we got 2-1 Nebraska so far. What do you got, Drew?
Yeah, I'm gonna roll with Nebraska. I think Cam kind of took my main point. I mean, one team can shoot, one team really can't. Rich, we talked about Wade Taylor a couple of weeks ago on who's hot, who's not, and it's like banking on a relatively inefficient 6-foot guard might get you a game if he has one, but it could also cost you one if he doesn't. I think Nebraska is just a little bit deeper and they shoot the ball better, and in March that's a big equalizer. So take the Cornhuskers.
Here we go. Nebraska advances. All right. So the next game we have Wisconsin versus James Madison. Wow. Now we know James Madison's for real. Sunbelt had some really good teams this year, including Appalachian State. Boy, this is tough. Why did I end up starting on this one? I really was impressed. Wisconsin, they've gone through these fluctuations, but they really did play well in the Big Ten tournament. Man, this is tough, but I'm going to say Wisconsin. I like the fact, the one weakness I don't like about Wisconsin is they don't have a go-to guy to score inside. And in fact, when Tyler Wall is the guy that they're relying on to go to inside, and they have the other, their center, their 7-footer in there, it just clogs everything up too much. So I hope they really don't play those two guys together a lot. Wisconsin has a lot of good guards. They have 4 or 5 good guards. Most of them can shoot and or attack the basket. I'm going to go with Wisconsin, but it wouldn't shock me. James Madison wins just because Wisconsin's been highly inconsistent this year. What do you say, Caleb?
I guess I'll pick chalk. I'm going to pick Wisconsin. I really like the balance of the roster. I like the balance of the offense. I feel like time and time again today we've talked about strength of schedule and like the importance of playing tough games. Well, Wisconsin has the 4th hardest schedule, and James Madison is the 325th strength of schedule. So I think just from a size perspective and a physicality perspective, this is going to be a team that's kind of solidly up a level from anything James Madison's faced this year.
Gotcha. Josh?
I do think all that's true. I think the path I'll pick James Madison, but I think the path that they would have to win that game is they attack, I think, at a quicker pace offensively in the half court than Wisconsin does, just in terms of guys catching the ball and going versus Wisconsin. So if they can exploit that matchup, which I think they can, it's a pretty well coached team, and I think with some time to prepare, I, that would be the path. If they shoot the ball well enough, I, they could get hot and win. They have the players, I think, to go hang tough with them and keep it competitive. So I'll pick Madison there in the upset.
All right, Cameron.
I'm actually going to go upset here as well. Here's my reasoning. Wisconsin can stick around defensively with some much bigger teams. But I think when it comes to a similar style of play team in James Madison that plays a higher pace, that's a pretty tantalizing upset possibility for me. I think ultimately, I think I like to kind of throw out strength of schedule at this time of year, right? It does play a role, and like Caleb said, but I think when your team can produce an on par defensive performance, and you're producing, the magnitude of like 12 points per game more on average, I'm going to take the upset there. Give me James Madison.
All right, we got 2-2. Who you got, Drew?
I too, again, maybe to make up for my early bracket cowardice, I'm going to take the upset here.
Wow.
I think I agree with a lot of what Cam said. The big thing for me is, as we know in this time of the year, the great equalizer in basketball nowadays is the 3-point shot. And Wisconsin doesn't really defend. They let opponents shoot roughly 37% from three on average, which is a pretty good rate. And James Madison already shoots close to 30. I think they're like 36.5%. So if they give up quality looks to this team, and James Madison sees a few go in, I go both sides. Like, I do think strength of schedule is important just to show that you're battle tested. You can hang, you know how to deal with size. I also understand Cam's point. It's March, anything goes. But because James Madison, especially early in the year, did play some tough teams, played teams that on paper are and on the court are bigger, more athletic, stronger, or you would assume so, they know how to handle that. And if they're allowed to take shots that they want to take and make, and especially if those shots are from three, this has potential upset. So I'll take James Madison.
Where is that game being played?
That game's being played in Brooklyn.
All righty. So the fans will probably be rooting for James Madison just by default. Where is Duke, Vermont being played?
That is also in Brooklyn.
All right, so that's our next game up, and I'm going to start us off. Vermont plays very disciplined style of ball. They're usually, they've been dominating the American East for a long time. I think, have they ever actually won a game in recent years? I know they've come close a couple times. Anyway, I picked Duke to win the national championship to start the season. So I'm certainly not going to pick them to go down to Vermont, though I could see Vermont giving this young Duke team, all kinds of fits to the very end. Caleb?
I honestly haven't seen a ton of Vermont. I famously am a Duke fan, and I am not particularly high on this Duke team, unfortunately. As much as I really want to be, I just have to be honest. I think Duke has the talent here to win. Clearly, even without Caleb Foster, just a lot of talent up and down the roster. During the ACC tournament, they finally decided to play Sean Stewart and TJ Power, and I think that's been giving them a pretty decent lift off the bench. While I don't think Duke is going to make a long run, I will pick them to beat Vermont, though.
All righty. All right. Josh, Duke, Vermont.
I got Vermont here. I kind of off of Caleb's point. I don't think this is Duke's best team. I do think they're a potential for an upset somewhere. This Vermont team, on the flip side, like Vermont is really good. I've seen a lot of the games this year, and I don't think this is Vermont's best team that they've had over the last couple of years. But this America East Conference was really good this year, and Vermont still found a way to grind it out late. TJ Long can score. Ao, I'm going to mispronounce the last name. Ao Filet. He's a 6'8" kid. He's a nice player, athletic. Um, they move the ball well, like they always do. They shoot, but they have an athleticism that they don't normally have. So I'm going to go Vermont. I like this team, and I think that they, by winning the conference, to secure home court, and then closing it out, I think that tells me something, that this team has championship DNA. So I'll give them the benefit.
Kim?
Oh, I'm going Duke, but I do think if Vermont pulls off this upset, we should force Caleb to get some sort of V tramp stamp, something like that. I don't know. Just saying, in case it happens, I just want to put that out there. So
Literally the
we got
ugliest
something
color
on the line.
shirt I've ever seen in existence.
But yeah, I'm going Duke.
All right, so Duke advances. And now we're going to start off with you, Drew. We have 6 seed Texas Tech against 11 seed NC State. And where might this game be played?
This game is played in Pittsburgh.
Okay, no real advantage there. I will say that, of course, NC State had to win 5 games in 5 days to get here. They're kind of banged up at a number of players. Casey Morcell, I'd say, would probably be the most worrisome. He had to leave the game against North Carolina late. But Texas Tech also, Darian Williams, they're one of their big forwards, probably their best rebounder, but also could do a little bit of everything. He too is banged up, but I think Texas Tech overall is in better shape. They also have their center. Williams is out, or at least he has been out for quite some time, but they've been winning without him. Some say they're even better off with him. But actually, so both teams are a little banged up, but I digress. Drew, what do you think? Texas Tech, NC State.
So this is where I'm going to just go on March Magic. NC State has not been great this year, but you can pretty easily claim they're the hottest team in the country coming into this tournament after running through the ACC, or I won't say running through, but getting through the ACC. And so I'm going to go with NC State here. This team 100% absolutely believes that it belongs. And sometimes that's enough. I think Texas Tech is good. Like they're solid, but I don't think they're so overwhelming in any way that NC State can't hang with them. And just the way that they're playing right now, sometimes the biggest and best weapon you can have is just that absolute confidence. And I mean, they're playing with house money. You know, they were projected to get bounced in the first round of the ACC, not make this tournament. They win the ACC. Now here they are. And it's like, you think that they're just almost in a sense happy to be here. And so I think that kind of belief, that lack of stress on their shoulder, the hotness of this team. I'm not even going to worry about metrics and stuff. You know, the way Burns is playing down low, they're calling him Baby Shaq now. I mean, it has like, you have like a player, you have a team that has kind of this, March Madness magic kind of sprinkled on them right now. I'm not saying they're going to go win the whole title, but I just think it's enough to get through. And 11-6 is one of those situations where you always see an 11-6 upset here or there. So give me NC State.
I'm going to take NC State as well. Just haven't been a big believer in Texas Tech all year. Where does the offense come from, beside Pop Isaac? Where does the rim protection come from? Who's going to match up with Burns? So that's 2-0 for NC State. What do you say, Caleb?
I'm going to make it 3-0. The last team to win 5 games in 5 days to win their conference tournament, Kemba Walker's UConn Huskies. That's what NC State is channeling here. We got the DJs going on the inside, the DJs going on the outside. I'm in for NC State to win this one game.
All righty. All right, so now we move down to Kentucky versus Oakland. Where might this game be played?
Kentucky, Oakland is also in Pittsburgh.
Okay, no, yeah, I'm not going to say there's any advantage there. All right, so who you got, Josh?
I'd like to say I like this Oakland team. So I'm going to pick Oakland. And I'll tell you why. Kentucky's good. Like they obviously got the athletes. I mean, realistically, if I'm betting the house on this, yeah, I'm taking Kentucky. It's a Final Four team, so they can absolutely make a run. What I will say about Oakland is there's something special about this team because down late they're super well coached. They play pretty efficient basketball. There's something about the way they won their conference late where I don't know. I kind of to Drew's point about NC State catching magic. This is a team that they hadn't won their conference tournament since 14. I think since joining the Horizon League. They kind of caught fire late in a season that might not be their best. I like this team. I'm going Oakland.
All right, Cam.
It's Kentucky for me. I think the scoring, and if you really look into the efficiency on this Kentucky team, it's pretty bonkers. I don't see them getting upset. I think they could just put so many points up on the board that it's not really a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I look for an upset team, I want to see somebody that, there's a path for them to outscore the other team, for the most part. But I don't see that happening with Kentucky. I'm taking Kentucky for sure.
Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cam kind of hit the nail on the head with this one. Like a bad scoring night for Kentucky is them scoring 70 points. That would be a good scoring night for like a lot of teams, like just from what we've seen. Rich, you and I have talked about how highly we think of Reed Shepherd, but we always talk when you think Kentucky, you think the young guns, but don't forget this is a team that has Reeves, that has Trey Mitchell, like they have some veteran guys as well, so they're not entirely reliant, on a freshman carrying the load. But I'm a believer in Reed Shepherd, and while I'm not the biggest Calipari guy, I just think they're going to go into this game and the wheels could fall off and they're still going to stumble and just get to 75 points somehow, it feels like. And it's like, I don't think Oakland can match that firepower. And if they have a game, we've seen it, they can go score 100. And if they get into the high 80s plus, Oakland can't keep pace with that. Give me Kentucky.
Yeah. Kentucky's going to break 100 in this game. We move them on. So now the next game is 7 seed Florida against a play-in. Tomorrow night's play-in. Whoops. I just clicked on that. And that's Boise versus, how do I unclick this?
So
It's Boise, Colorado.
Right. So we won't know that winner. I'm just trying to undo. I think I just put Boise State in the Final Four. But anyway, one thing I will say about Florida is Micah, their starting center, Micah Hanlon, suffered a broken leg in the SEC championship game, so he won't be available. I don't, it's a significant loss, but at the same time, Florida does have very good depth in terms of size. So I don't know if it's something. It hurts some, but it's not a crusher. So what do you think, Caleb? Florida or Boise State / Colorado?
I'm gonna pick the play-in team. I think Boise State is one of the most underseeded teams in the tournament. Honestly, could have probably been like a seven seed along with Florida. And I don't think that would have been that surprising. And then I just really like the talent of Colorado. Obviously they've been up and down. They've got some experience, but I think from like a really talent perspective, one of the more talented teams in the field. And like you said, like Florida has their starting center hurt. Not a huge loss, but I do think they're a little banged up, trying to figure some stuff out with, Riley Kugel's basically out of their rotation now.
Right.
So I think they're kind of figuring some stuff out offensively.
They've actually played better without Kugel.
It's fair. I'm still going play-in team.
Right. So, Josh, what do you got? Play-in or Florida?
Yeah, I got playing. I like this Boise State team a lot. I think they play very athletic basketball. I think that they really put pressure on you. They really kind of thrive off of getting on runs. And I think Florida, a type of team like Florida that could turn the ball over, I think is susceptible to runs. I like them. Colorado, I think, could give a fight to them also. So
Yeah.
either way, yeah, I'll go upset there.
Yep. Cam?
Yeah, I'm also taking the playing field here. I think
Wow.
regardless of who gets out of the play-in, I think, with Handlot out, I mean, granted, it's, not a massive loss, but he is their starter. And you don't want to go up against two pretty spicy play-in teams. They're hot off of a game with injuries on, like a new injury too. Matter of fact, yeah, me personally, I see Colorado getting out there over Boise too. Just to kind of put that pick out there, I think De Silva is the type of guy that could really put together a little bit of a Cinderella run in March Madness, and yeah, I don't see why either Boise State or Colorado could get in over Florida.
Speaking of playing games, is anybody watching this Virginia Colorado State
No.
ugly ass game?
Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah, yeah. I will say this:
it's so
Clifford
bad.
has had an awesome night, though.
Oh,
They
he's looked.
denied us
I mean, Colorado
Kareem
State's looked really
Abdul-Jabbar.
good. Virginia's looked atrocious.
Virginia, the problem with Virginia is you can't play it in 2024 a style of basketball that limits your possessions to this degree and hope that you're going to win basketball games because you just don't have the shooting to do that.
Right.
It was one thing when
you
Tony
never
Bennett
have
kind of started.
you never have a decent lead, a comfortable lead with the way they play.
They denied us Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for this. Just remember
Yes,
that.
Exactly.
Wait, what?
Or St. John's. I mean,
That's the
I
more
was really
logical
shocked
pick.
that St. John's wasn't in.
But we didn't get Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from Indiana State
Exactly.
for this Virginia team. I'll never forgive the committee.
All
Baby
right.
Jokic, baby.
No Devin Carter.
So we moved on Boise State, and the next matchup is number 2 Marquette against 15 seed Western Kentucky, who wasn't really expected to be here. Drew, or I should say, Drew, I assume you like Marquette. Is anybody like Western Kentucky? All right, we'll move Marquette along. So let's see. So now we move back up top, and we have Houston versus Nebraska. And again, where is this South region? First 2 rounds. Where's this game at?
This is in Memphis.
Okay, shouldn't be. Probably about 50-50, maybe a little bit toward Nebraska. So who you got, Drew?
I'm taking Houston. While I think the injuries make them somewhat susceptible, I think this team's just desire and ability to compete. I mean, they're better than Nebraska when they're fully healthy, and I still think that the way they attack teams, like they literally use their defense to generate offense. Give me Houston. I just think Jamal Shed is the perfect leader for this team. LJ Cryer can get going at any given point to generate enough offense. I'll take the Cougars.
Well, I would agree with you, but I'm going with Nebraska. I don't know if there is a quicker release in college basketball than Tominaga's. They have multiple guys who can light it up, so they don't have to rely just on Tominaga. And they have Wiltshire. They have I'm forgetting all the names, but they definitely have guys who can fill it up. This Houston team is down to nothing, basically. They're down to like 5 guys, and that's assuming Roberts is able to play. That's Jawan Roberts may not, he didn't play much in the Big 12 final. I just think Houston's going to get shocked. I think Nebraska's going to hit their threes, and it's going to be a huge upset. Caleb?
I'm gonna go Houston. I still think their physicality and their talent wins out. They have such a well-coached team, so physical up and down the roster. I love Jamal Shed. One of my favorite players to watch this season. coming into the season, Houston. Oh man, I don't know if I've loved Houston all year, and it kills me that they're missing so much of their depth because I do think it will bite them in the butt. But this is not the game.
Alrighty, Josh.
Yeah, I echo everything that's been said on Houston, and I haven't heard or found one college basketball fan in existence that does not love Jamal Shead. This dude is just an awesome player to watch, and I love the kid. Crier, this team's just too good, and regardless of depth, I think depth doesn't make a ton of difference this time of year. At the end of the day, as long as you get 6 guys that can get out there, you'll figure out a way. And if any team can handle lack of depth, it's a Kelvin Sampson led team with Jamal Shead on it. So Houston's not dropping, I don't think.
Alrighty, Cam.
I'm with you in spirit, Rich. I think Tominaga is going to be an absolute household name in March, but I'm still taking Houston. I just don't think Nebraska is going to have enough firepower to take out this Houston team.
Alrighty, you guys watch. All right, we got JMU versus Duke. And Drew, lead us off.
Duke is more talented, but this team is soft, man. This team's not, in my opinion, this team is not built for March. I'll be honest.
Just wait till next year.
I don't. My brother's gonna listen because my brother tunes in all the time, and I'm gonna get like a death threat while I'm here in Iowa. He's a huge Duke guy. I don't really have, to be completely honest. This is an entirely gut feeling. I'm taking James Madison. I just don't believe in this Duke team, and I think James Madison again believes enough and it is good enough to be in the game. And if they're in the game, does Duke start to feel it? Does Duke start to get tight? Tyrese Proctor is yet to show up really in a big game. Flip has been just like really good statistically, but I just feel like the impact just hasn't been there. Don't have a lot of rhyme, don't have a lot of reason, but I'm taking James Madison.
All righty. Caleb?
I'd pick James Madison or Wisconsin, to be honest. It doesn't even matter. This Duke team just kills me. They're so talented and they're just like so young and can't really put it together. Sean Stewart is their 5th best player and probably is like 8th in the rotation because Shire wants to keep playing Mark Mitchell for some reason. And like Drew said with Flip, he statistically looks so good. And then I watched a friend of mine did I think Bleacher Report released like a mock draft today. And somebody was like, oh, here's my favorite value picks. And Flip at 15 was like one of his favorite value picks in the NBA draft. And I'm just like, in what world is Filipowski an NBA player? Like, I actually really don't see it. And that like kills me to say. On paper, it looks like it should be Duke, but I'm good to go. I'm good for JMU. I'd pick Wisconsin too.
Wow. So I would pick Duke, and if I was betting my house on it, so I'll say Duke. I'll make it 2-1. James Madison. What do you got, Josh?
Yeah, I'll go James Madison there. I feel like I could see Terrence Edwards having a nice game there, and kind of carving him up. This James Madison team plays kind of off of Andrew's first point. Like there's a vibe to it. They play with sort of a hunger about it, where they played with something to prove all season, and I think it's sort of proving that Michigan State game was not a fluke, which it was not, and you don't lose 3 games by accident. And I don't think this Duke team is the one to take them out. You got to have a toughness to beat this team, and I don't think Duke has that. So,
all right. James Madison moves on. All right, next game we have 11 seed NC State versus 3 seed Kentucky. Who you got, Cameron?
Give me Kentucky here. I think this is one of the best Kentucky teams in recent memory. But I also don't love the construction of the team. It's kind of counterintuitive. Like I've loved some of the talent on past Kentucky teams, but I think somehow this team just fits together in a way that promotes more winning basketball than maybe some of the past Kentucky teams. I hate to say like they can just score, They
And
can
they
just
share
outscore
the
just about
ball.
anybody. They
They
do,
share the
yeah.
ball.
And if somebody has an off night, they have options to cover for that. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think in tournament play, you can't get something more valuable than options. I'm going Kentucky.
Right. Drew, what do you got?
I'm going to take Kentucky. I mentioned the NC State Magic, but I mean, to win 7 in a row and against that gauntlet of opponents would be pretty tough. And again, I agree with Cam. Like, we're so used to Kentucky being loaded with these like NBA names across the board, and like that's not really the case here. But it almost seems beneficial in that they're just playing good basketball. Like I mentioned earlier, they have some veteran guys with a mix of young guys who are hooping. I really like this Kentucky team. Ever since my Zags went in there and beat them, they've been a different team since that game, and I've kind of cranked it to another level. So give me the Wildcats.
All right. So we need one more vote for Kentucky to move them on. What do you say, Caleb?
Yeah, move on Kentucky. The offense is absolutely absurd. Like there's no other way to say it. And they've got depth at the center position. They've got pieces to play with. Like I know Calipari's not necessarily known for his in-game adjustments, but he has so many pieces to play with, and they all fit together in really interesting ways.
Yeah. All right. So now we have Marquette against the either Colorado or Boise. Personally, I think that will be Colorado. But I'm going to go with Marquette. Tyler Kolek is supposed to be ready to roll. Iguodaro, he's been a little hampered by injuries of late as well, but he should be ready to go. I mean, obviously, Marquette, if they're not at 100%, I can see them losing. But if they are close to 100%, I don't see them losing to Boise, Colorado, or Florida. So I'm going with Marquette. What do you think, Josh?
Yep, I think they just have a ton of players. Regardless of whether that matters or not, this team is deep. Guys like Ben Gold coming off the bench. You got guys like Stevie Mitchell, Cam Jones. This team can ball. This team's for real. They play defense. They can score. I like Marquette there. I think Oso has a really big tournament and kind of plays up. I hope he does well.
Yeah. Drew?
Yeah, I mean, give me Marquette. You guys hit the nail on the head. I'll just echo, this is a team where like we don't really talk about Cam Jones on this team. Like everyone, it's Kolek and Iguodaro, and like Cam Jones can hoop. Like how many teams would that guy go on and be the best player or, the second best player? It's a pretty good amount. So I just think that they've got, really 3 studs. We talked about 2 of them. Hopefully Kolek's 100%. I could see that being the one issue is if it comes out that he's never really fully healed. He's the head of the snake. Rich and I, we mentioned that, him and Iguodaro have that, Stockton Malone-esque thing. So he isn't 100%. That now starts to limit Iguodaro. Things can get interesting. But taking all things at face value, give me Marquette.
All right. So now we move up to the top of the bracket. We have Houston versus James Madison. Who you got, Cam?
Give me Duke. No, I'm just kidding. I'll take oh man. I
do it, Cam.
I don't trust this Houston team this year.
Do it, Cam.
Not to go deep, not with the health. I'll take JMU, I guess.
And I see what you mean. This bracket has all the makings of total chaos. Where the East is just all these stone walls. All right, so we got one vote for JMU. Who you got, Caleb? Houston or JMU?
Wisconsin here for sure. Again, like I think at some point, I think the lack of depth is going to matter. Like Houston plays 6 people, they really play 5. Like I totally understand that you don't need to have 9-10 guys. You don't need to go 9-10 deep. Nobody does. But at some point, you just can't play 5 guys. You do need to have some semblance of a bench. I don't think this is the game that it bites Houston. Again, so physical, so well coached. Jamal Shed is having a really special season, and I think they keep going.
Okay. I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna say Houston here in this particular matchup. So it's 2-1 Houston. Who you got, Josh?
Yeah, I think it's what Caleb said. At some point, the depth's going to bite them. I don't think it's there though. They got the athletes to out athlete James Madison. And I think James Madison can score. They're probably not outscoring Houston though.
Right. Right. All right. So now we move on to Kentucky Marquette. Who you got, Drew?
I'm taking Kentucky, and this seems anyone who's been listening to the pod last couple of years seems a little sacrilegious, but I've really grown fond of this team. I've watched them a lot this year. To be honest, part of me goes through the annual Kentucky cycle. If they look good, then they lose, and I'm like, fire Cal, they suck. But this year, I feel like they've been a little bit more steady for a lot of the reasons we've mentioned. So I'll take Kentucky. I think the offense rolls, and Marquette is good, but Shaka Smart still can't get out of that Sweet 16.
All right. Cameron?
Yeah, I'm going Kentucky as well. I think I just think from an NBA, kind of perspective, I think Dillingham has become one of the most underrated prospects in the NCAA right now. I think, at a surface, he's a scorer, but I think he affects the game in some incredibly positive ways. I'm going to take Kentucky here. I love Iguodaro, but I just think the guard play from Kentucky and the pace that they can play at is going to be a little bit overwhelming for Marquette.
Yep. Caleb?
I think if we get this one, like there's the obvious matchup of Cam Jones and Kolek versus the Kentucky guards, but I think what I'm really looking forward to see is seeing the matchup of the bigs, right? Like Kentucky has some bigs with less experience, and maybe like physically weaker, but they're all huge and great shot blockers. And so I'm really fascinated to see that matchup versus Iguodaro. Kentucky also really has the guards. That's not what I meant to say. It'll be interesting to see if Marquette has the guards to get some of the Kentucky bigs in space. Like, can Cam Jones and Tyler Kolek make those Kentucky bigs play in space? I think that'll kind of be where the matchup lies. I really love this Marquette team. I think when Rich and I did our midway season pod, I think I picked Marquette as a Final Four team, even though they had like fallen to 12th or 15th. And oh my gosh, I think I'm still gonna have to pick Kentucky. I just love this offense. I have been watching Reed since he was a sophomore in high school, and to see him really step up on some of these massive stages right now is really awesome to see. And I think he's kind of him and Antonio Reeves kind of share that like leadership role really, really well with Kentucky. And this Kentucky team feels kind of special.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we move Kentucky along, and I'll start us off. If we get into the Final Four, we have Houston versus Kentucky, and to me, it's hands down Kentucky. I don't even know if Houston's going to make it this far, though. I will say this region is pretty weak. But yeah, I like Kentucky to get by Marquette because Marquette may not be healthy. So Kentucky doesn't have to worry about, something like that. If somebody gets hurt, they get somebody else to step right in. So, and Houston, we know is surviving on fumes at this point. I'm going with Kentucky. Who you got, Josh?
I'm going to go Houston there. I really like, even with the lack of depth, I think this Houston team, as much as the Kentucky team, it feels like there's something special. It feels like Houston too. I mean, to come into the Big 12 and win it in year one is not insignificant. And even though they're lacking guys, I think in that game, if you slow down the game a little bit, which they can do, muck it up a little bit and frustrate Kentucky, that would be kind of the path, and just get the guards frustrated. That get a low scoring game in a high 60s. I'll take Houston.
Yeah, that's what would have to happen. Drew?
I love Houston. I love everything about this team. I've loved everything about Kelvin Sampson. I tweeted something out a couple days ago or last week about how their culture is. I think this team, unfortunately, though, runs out of gas here. And I'm not saying they get blown out. This team, I think, goes down swinging and puts up a hell of a fight. But I think Kentucky's going to throw so many body shots at a team that's going to take body shots and has been taking them since they've been in the Big 12, that they finally just run out of gas. And Kentucky just has enough to edge them out. I could see myself being wrong. I could see Houston just making like some blood sacrifice, give everything they absolutely have to get to the Final Four. Wouldn't be shocked, but I think Kentucky just kind of overwhelms them. It's like a 300 Spartans versus, a million Persians type of thing. Like Houston is not backing down. They're going to go out on their terms, but I just don't know if they have enough in the tank after this run. I'll take Kentucky.
Cam?
Yeah, I'm going Kentucky. I just don't see Houston having enough to get out of this bracket. Pretty much any of my personal brackets have some combination of Duke, Kentucky, or Marquette making it out to the Final Four. And I think, with the injuries, as great of a culture as Houston has, you got to have guys to put on the court. I don't know if they have enough to sustain that level of play through tournament. So I'm going to go Kentucky.
All right, Kentucky moves on. And now we move down to the West. Is there anyone here that thinks Wagner can beat North Carolina? All right, we'll move North Carolina along. And now we have 8 Mississippi State against 9 Michigan State. Where might that game be played?
They're playing in Charlotte.
Okay. All right, you're up, Caleb. What do you got? Spartans, who were your preseason national champion, or Mississippi State?
I hate that you reminded me of that because I'm gonna have to pick Mississippi State here for the single reason that people talk about Tom Izzo as like Mr. March, as though he has this unimpeached March record and he's like won one national title, and it was 25 years ago. And I want the bit to end, and so I'm gonna pick Mississippi State.
Wow. This is a tough one for me. This is a real tough one for me. The reason why I'm not crazy about Mississippi State is because of their shooting. They're strong, they're athletic, they play good defense, but their offense really Josh Hubbard, who we had on the show, the freshman, is really their only real good shooter. I'm going to have to go with Michigan State here, though. I mean, I wouldn't have argued if they didn't even make the tournament. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go Michigan State. What do you got, Josh?
I'll take Mississippi State. I think if they can push the pace a little bit, that can bother Michigan State. And I think they got some players like Matthews that can kind of bother Michigan State. So I like Mississippi State there.
All right, Drew, you're up. Michigan State or Mississippi State? It's 2-1 Mississippi State.
I'm taking Michigan State. I think this is like one of those games that's going to be like, I think the projected score when I was looking was 67-66 in favor of the Spartans. So this is literally a coin toss, but I'm going to take Michigan State. I know that they've been up and down, but I'm going to just buy into the talent. And I know like Caleb's not wrong, but I think Izzo's going to get him through this one, and then we'll see what happens from there.
All right, Cam, we got to break the tie. It's 2-2.
I'm a believer in the Izzo juju, personally. I'm not saying he's going to take them anywhere, but he'll at least take them out of the first round. I mean, in terms of that track record. Wait, what did you say? Oh, no matter.
I just said he'd take him to one game, win one game with him.
Yeah, I mean, he has a track record too of taking the Michigan State teams that don't look like they're all that good deeper than the ones that should go deep.
Yeah, they usually get to like the Sweet 16.
Yeah, so and they're, I mean, as far as 8-9 matchups, these teams are just so damn similar when it comes to, their performances against top 25 teams. I mean, they can put together some real masterpieces from time to time, but for the most part, they lose out. So it kind of comes down to, who's going to have it that night. I'm going to go Michigan State personally.
All right, so Michigan State moves on. Now we have a very interesting 5-12 matchup between St. Mary's and Grand Canyon. Who you got, Caleb?
This was a really tough one for me. Or I really love Tom and Grant Foster for Grand Canyon. Love the way the Grand Canyon plays. Oh man, I do think I will have to still pick St. Mary's. I love their defense. I love their balance of the roster, and I really enjoy their backcourt. I can definitely see the path to victory for Grand Canyon, but I think I'm gonna have to stick with St. Mary's.
All right. I'm going to go with Grand Canyon. They've hardly lost any games this year. They played some good teams. They have some good wins. I mean, beside Grant Foster, you know, they have their last year's leading scorer, Rashawn Harrison, who averaged almost 20 points per game before Foster came. And the year before that, you know, it was Javon Blackshear, who's averaged about 16 points per game. And he's basically now just a role player. So this team has players who can score and players on the bench who can score. St. Mary's to me has kind of been, you know, kind of playing over their head all year. I know they, you know, that's kind of, they have that Virginia-like approach, which I can't stand. So go Grand Canyon. Josh?
I like St. Mary's here. I think their offense is a little bit more dynamic with the three guys, Saxon, Marcialunas, and Mahaney. I like this team. I think they're competitive. They winning the West Coast means something against Gonzaga for them. And they're solid. They're solid. I think there's a talent difference between them and Grand Canyon, and the talent wins out.
I'm not so sure. What do you think, Drew?
Oh boy. No, I'm taking Grand Canyon. First and foremost, I get it. People are going to be, you're a hater. They knocked off my Zags. For all those you think that, congratulations, you're 14-48, Randy against Mark Few. So I don't really care. We'll let a dog have a day. But no, I do think though, from an actual basketball standpoint, with Joshua Jefferson being out, I think we've seen that kind of, Rich, I think they've been kind of playing above their station a little bit. You know, the two times like they beat the Zags in the West Coast and the Zags played awful. I don't know if you guys watched that game. They were bad and it was really like a 4-point game. Free throws pushed it up to I think 9. But like it wasn't like a dominating win. They don't have any really dominating wins. The WCC was down this year. And I think Grand Canyon comes in and gives them a look. I think Grant Foster's, without Jefferson, a mismatch problem. His athleticism and ability to just be a force both in a half court and in a transition setting is something they can't match. I'm not an Aiden Mahaney believer. For whatever reason, the kid loves to give the Zags trouble, but he's been so inconsistent. Marcialunas is a fine player, but I think Grant Foster is a dude. I think St. Mary's has a bunch of guys, and I think there's a difference between a dude and guys. So I'll take Grand Canyon. I do think this is a good game, though. I think St. Mary's is going to try to impose their will, but I think Grand Canyon is equipped enough to be able to play in either setting. And if this does turn into a transition battle, St. Mary's can't run with these guys.
No. Cameron, you got to break a tie again.
I'm going Grand Canyon here. I think Mahaney has a tendency to show up in big games, but he also has a tendency to really fall apart under the pressure. Like we've said, inconsistent in that way. And I think tournament play, who's to say if he has a really rough night or a great night? I'm gonna bet on he's having a little bit of a rough night. Give me Grand Canyon.
I think for the season he's under 40% from the field, so that's kind of a rough season right there. And somehow he made all conference, first team all conference.
Blasphemy. Absolute blasphemy. There's no way a guy who shoots under 40% in the WCC is first team all conference. Get that crap out of here.
All right, so now we have Alabama who's struggling. Alabama's finally playing like we kind of expected them to. You know, the metrics have been telling us all year still do say Alabama is a great team, but they've really kind of fallen off a cliff of late against a steady Charleston team that likes to play a lot of players, has some size, has some athleticism, and has some shooting. Who you got? Who's up? Drew? Drew, you up? I guess you're up, Drew.
Yeah. This one's tough. I know I haven't. I'm going to take Charleston. I just think Charleston's really steady and Alabama's kind of the opposite, where like Alabama's peaks and valleys are pretty dramatic. I don't love that in March. Obviously, they're more talented. I think very highly of Mark Sears. He was my personal runner up for SEC Player of the Year behind. I thought it should have been Dalton, rightfully so, but I think Mark Sears was my second guy there. So I'll take the upset here. But I'm not super confident because I think if Alabama has a high, they're better. But I just don't know if I can trust Alabama night in, night out. Whereas Charleston's been really solid this year. They're on, you want to talk about a hot streak. They've won what, I think like 12 in a row or something like that. And they've played some solid teams in their conference. They played Drexel, they played Hofstra, so those are some solid
No,
teams
it's
in
good
there.
conference. Good conference.
Yeah, so I'm not. If we're going to argue strength of schedule, I think they've played good teams. I'll take Charleston to pull off the upset.
Caleb, who you got? Charleston, Alabama.
Oh man. I see what Drew's saying. I think I'm gonna have to stick with Alabama and the talent. I know they've been struggling as of late, but I just think this is a really talented roster. And it's athletically just not a team that I see them losing to.
Hmm.
I think it's gonna be simple for that.
I like Charleston. Alabama's sloppy. They don't rebound. They get in foul trouble. Those guys walk onto the court before the game starts with 2 fouls. They live and die by the three, and yet who's really a good 3-point shooter on that team besides Sears? Yeah, I don't like the way this Alabama team's composed. I know all the metrics say they're great, but I'm going with Charleston. Josh?
I like Charleston here. I think they play. I was curious how this team responded coming off of last year, and I think they play with the same energy they did last year. I'm really impressed with their defense. Super active. I think they can get out and bother Alabama, frustrate them. To your point, Rich, I think they're a little bit. Alabama tends to be a little bit undisciplined, and
Yeah.
against an energetic, disciplined team like Charleston, I think that's probably not a great recipe. So I'll go Charleston here. I like them in the upset. It's a good team.
All right. Yep. They move on. All right. So now we have a great matchup 6-11 Clemson, 6 seed versus 11 New Mexico. New Mexico just had to win 4 games to advance to win the Mountain West. Clemson was upset in their first game. Surprisingly, I picked them to win the ACC championship. Who you got, Cameron? Clemson or New Mexico? It's a tough one.
Give me the Lobos. I got a lot of love for the House family. So those father-son stories have a way of popping up in March Madness. So we'll take the New Mexico upset here.
Drew?
Yeah, I'm taking the Lobos. I've seen obviously a lot of Mountain West out here. We've talked about it with all the other Mountain West teams. Brutal conference. These guys can hoop. They defend the 3-point line pretty well, which is always good to see in terms of them being able to eliminate that weapon from a team. I'm going to take the Lobos here. I think they are underseeded, to be honest. I think that they're better than, what are they, at 11? I'm very confident saying that they're better than 11. So, whereas I think Clemson is a 6, I think they kind of got a team that could easily be a 6 as well, like
actually,
in that 7 to 6 range.
I was a little surprised Clemson was so high as a 6. Of course, I didn't go around comparing them, but when I just saw I don't know. Does Clemson's just I don't know.
I think they favored Clemson very early. Like they
they favored Clemson because of
production.
their early season schedule with the wins over teams like Alabama, a team that I don't. It kind of builds on each other.
Yeah, I think Clemson got a tough draw here because I think they got handed an 11 seed team that really is they're probably in contention to be a 6 or 7. So I'm taking the Lobos as well.
Right. All right. It's 2-0 New Mexico. Who you got, Caleb?
I'll make it 3-0 New Mexico. Really love the guard trio for New Mexico. They're playing really, really, really well right now. And I think New Mexico is probably the more physical and more athletic team, more athletically gifted team too. So I think between both
I don't know
of
about
those
physical,
things,
but it's definitely more athletic.
Yeah. But I'm picking New Mexico. Really like the guards.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I like that logic. And believe it or not, New Mexico beat San Diego State in the championship game without Donovan Dent. Their point guard who's dishing out like about 7 assists per game. He got some kind of flu or food sickness or something and could hardly play. So yeah, and they still won. They still beat San Diego State. So all right.
Just to add for people out there that haven't seen this New Mexico team, this is absolutely one of those games that you might not look at in the first round and be like, "Oh, this is one to watch." But that's absolutely a fun team to watch play.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a lot of respect for Clemson. PJ Hall's a great player. Joe Girard could fill it up, but I don't know. I just think Mexico has more ways to beat you. So we'll start with me on the next game. It's 3 seed Baylor against 14 Colgate. Colgate's a really good team. They actually have a freshman. I think his name is Lawson. Who really impressed me in the tournament. His metrics are really, really good. He's got decent size. I've seen his athleticism. Colgate might have a pro there, but the players, the other players, especially their bigs, are really slow. I mean, this team is always there. It's always in the tournament. It dominates their conference, but they can't seem to get over the hump, and I don't see that versus Baylor. Anybody voting for Colgate to beat Baylor? All right, so we move Baylor on. The next one is great game, and I wish we didn't lose Caleb for this because he would certainly want to.
This for me might have been the hardest first round game for me to pick.
All right, so first of all, let's get the location for this one. We have Dayton at Nevada, 2 programs that are very friendly to the show. By the way, one of these days, I got to tell you guys some stories about some really asshole SIDs that I've had trouble with via email over the years, and then got to meet them in person, and they're bigger assholes in person. So,
Also, real quick, Caleb's out for the night. He's got 5 a.m. wake up call.
okay, I get it. All right, so now we're gonna have some interesting tiebreakers. So we have 7 Dayton at 10 Nevada. Where is
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City? So certainly would favor Nevada a little bit. So who you got, Drew?
Oh, this game was so hard for me to pick. I switched this on a bracket probably 4 times on as I was flying out here to Iowa. I've been traveling for basically like 10 hours today, and I think every hour like clockwork I went back in and flipped this game. I'm taking Dayton solely because I think Darrell Holmes is the best player, and this is a complete coin flip to me. There's no wrong answer to this game. I think this is potentially like the most unsure I've been for any first round game. I really like this Nevada team. Lucas is a stud. I like they are again battle tested, all the stuff we said about the Mountain West, but I'm taking Dayton in a absolute in a battle barn burner.
I will see some injury updates, by the way. Hunter McIntosh, who's really played well, especially when Keenan Blackshear was out for Nevada. And even when Keenan came back, McIntosh has really, really played super well. Certainly, I think he had too many starts to be considered 6th man of the year in the Mountain West. But that type of player, he's a little questionable right now. And Bennett, the little tiny point guard for Dayton, also had been out with a hand injury that prevented him from shooting and dribbling. But I think he is okay now, or at least going to play. So with all that said, you took Drew. Repeat for me because I was thinking about the injuries and I didn't hear.
I'm taking Dayton, but coin flip.
Yeah,
but I'm taking
agreed.
Dayton.
Agreed. What are you thinking, Cam?
Yeah, man, this one's tough. I'm gonna go with Dayton. I think the combination of Daron Holmes in the middle and the fact that Dayton quietly is shooting over 40% from 3 is a really tough combo for any team to match up with because you got just a killer inside presence and you've got the floor spacing for him to feast. Give me Dayton.
All right. I'm going to go in Nevada. I like their depth. I like the different ways that they can attack you. Kobe, all the respect in the world to Dayton. Daron Holmes, we know, is an All-American. Kobe Brea, we know, is one of the best 3-point shooters in the country. But depth-wise, that team really only goes 5-6 deep. And Nevada could throw a lot of different bodies at you. They could throw a lot of different bodies at Holmes. They're a bigger team. They're a more physical team. I'm going to go with Nevada.
I like Dayton here. I think Nate Santos is a super clutch player. Guy can hit clutch
He
shots.
is. Forgot about him.
And I think that's probably they have dudes. They got guys that can play on that team. I really like that team. I go Dayton.
Yep, I hear you. So Dayton moves
fact,
on.
they're right next to each. Fun fact: they're literally right next to each other on Ken Palm, and like all the metrics have them literally right next to each other. Like on all these sites that like I did for my homework, they are. I couldn't. I was like, I'll let the computers decide my fate on this one. They were like this. I was like, fuck.
I wonder who has if you notice on our March Madness cheat sheet, I have a special formula that I've created called the upset index, which emphasizes certain stats. I wonder who has the higher one there. Didn't sort it by that. Dayton's at 82.7 and Nevada's at 84.8. So it likes Nevada. My upset index, I call it. But no, I basically looked at the stats that I think lead to upsets either for or against you, such as not being able to hit your foul shots. So that's one of the statistics that's emphasized. So, all right. So now we move Dayton along, and now we have number 2 seeded Arizona against Long Beach, a team that I thought, had a chance to win that conference, though I liked Santa Barbara, but we all know how that disaster worked out. So is anyone like Arizona to lose to Long Beach? All right, so we move Arizona along, and we'll move up to the top of the bracket. We have North Carolina versus Michigan State. Who you got, Cameron?
The Izzo magic is just enough to get them to the second round before getting absolutely curb stomped by North Carolina. I don't see any other outcome here personally.
Yep. Agreed. Josh?
I don't think Michigan State has an answer for Baycott at all. And so Carolina.
Yeah. Michigan State also doesn't have any post offense this year. And I think that's one of the things that we overlook. We thought Xavier Booker was going to be a lot better than he was. And he's not. All right, Drew, you're up. We have Grand Canyon, the 12 seed against 13 seed Charleston.
I mean, March Madness, baby. I'm gonna take Grand Canyon again here. I think this is one where it boils down to where we've said Charleston's deep. I think Grand Canyon is the best player, and honestly, one of the most underrated players in the tournament. I really like Grant Foster's game. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the dunk he had in the MAC championships, like some of the dunks he had and the plays he had. You were just like, God damn. But I think this game's actually sneaky, really good basketball. Might not be the most high flying, biggest brands, but I think Grand Canyon wins.
All right, Cameron?
I'm with you, Drew. I'm going Grand Canyon here. I'm still a little bit hesitant on Charleston getting past Bama to begin with. So I think Grand Canyon is much more of a sure thing to get this far.
Very good point. Not to mention that Grant Foster has been on our show and Charleston never answers my emails. So Charleston, you're going down right here. Just a joke. I don't know if I actually reached out to Charleston because one of the things about Charleston is it's interesting. So they may have not. I may have not contacted them. So that was just a joke. And the reason is because they're very balanced. There is no star on that team, but they do go deep. So yeah, and I just like the athleticism of Grand Canyon. All right, so now we have an interesting matchup of 11 seed New Mexico and 3 seed Baylor. Where might that game be played? Well, they're pretty close together, so I guess it wouldn't really matter.
So the West Regionals are in LA.
Okay. All right. So who you got, Josh? New Mexico, Baylor.
Well, I'm going to stick with New Mexico there. I really like their guards. I feel like House could have one of these games. He really could go off for 35 or something. And if he's playing in the second round, he's got a good chance to do it. Baylor doesn't. I don't defend a 3 great, I'll take New Mexico.
All right. What do you got, Drew?
I'm gonna take Baylor. I've been pretty adamant about how I like this Baylor team. I mean, Josh is right that New Mexico has great guards, but I also think that Baylor's got good guards. I mean, you got Ray J. Dennis, Jaden Nunn. Jacoby Walter can play the 2 or the 3. I mean, I know he starts at the 3, but he's seen some time at the 2. And we're talking about a guy that's it's gonna be an NBA lottery pick. And then Yves Missi just in the middle, like, relatively raw but like 7 foot legit athlete, can protect the paint, give them kind of just that like interior presence that's just a deterrent. I think this is again a really good game. I like this New Mexico team. I saw them play a lot this year, but I also like this Baylor team. And if you do want to go on like the strength of schedule, this is again a team that doesn't really have any bad losses. I mean, 3 of them came in OT. They lost in OT to Houston. They had that triple overtime throw against TCU, and then they had another overtime in there against another like solid opponent. I think it was one of the Kansas schools. I can't remember which one. So I'll take Baylor, but I think the Lobos actually can give them a game here.
All right. It's 1-1, Cam. We got.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't going to shock you, but I have a real soft spot for Yves Missi. I love watching that guy play. Drew's
Yeah, we
laughing at me.
we talked about him early on this season.
We
did. We did.
Love it. But man, I think this Baylor team has all of the right tools to make a really deep run, but they just have a tendency to kind of fall apart in the big moments. But I also don't see New Mexico pushing them hard enough to really get to that point. I think, Baylor's just got a superior size team. They're going to out rebound New Mexico pretty easily, I think. And I think that's going to make a big difference in the game. So give me Baylor here.
I actually think that they match up well. It's just that, like, if you compare them 1-to-1, it's almost like the Baylor. If you look at each position, Baylor almost wins all those battles. So, I mean, the players are comparable. But I like Baylor. I like Baylor. Not to mention, I'm not completely sold that New Mexico is going to get by Clemson. So I got to go with Baylor. All right. So now we have Dayton, the 7th seed versus 2 Arizona. Who you got, Josh?
Boy, that'd be a fun game. I'm going to take Dayton there. In order to beat Arizona, you have to have someone who can go against Ballo, and Holmes can do it. He could draw him out a little bit of his comfort zone outside the paint. We've talked about Dayton shooting their guards. It's a really balanced team. They have the athleticism to play with Arizona, so I'll take Dayton in a really close game.
Drew?
Yeah, I just have, to be honest, I think I just lost faith in Arizona. March Madness logic, you always got to pick a 1 or 2 that gets knocked out pretty early. And I think, unfortunately, it's going to be Arizona. They've just shown that. I mean, we've seen it in the last couple of games. Get blown out by USC, then you blow them out in the tournament, and then you turn around and lose. So it's like to an Oregon team that you're better than. So I just think Dayton's going to come in. And I think Josh is right. I think Deron Holmes is the perfect guy to go toe to toe with Ballo because he's more skilled and can pull him away and legitimately play on the perimeter, not like, pretend to, like, he's not going to live out there, but he can pull him away from the basket. He can play in the mid range. He can step out and knock down a 3. And the great equalizer, Dayton can shoot. And Arizona's best guy is Caleb Love, who is just as liable to shoot them out of a game as he is to shoot them into one. So,
and Boswell could do the same,
And yes, exactly. So I'll take Dayton.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. And Dayton moves on because even if both Cam and I tied it up, the higher seed, or I don't know if you called them the higher seed or the lower seed, but the higher number seed would be Dayton. So they move on. So now we'll stay right there. You didn't get a chance to comment, Cam, on Dayton there in that game, but now we have Dayton and Baylor in the Sweet 16.
I mean, that's a hell of a interior matchup, and a hell of a guard matchup. In a lot of ways, they have very, very similar styles of play. I wouldn't be. To me, this is really a coin flip. I could honestly use some help here. I have a hard time picking between the two. My gut says Baylor. Most of my brackets, I have Baylor matching up with North Carolina in the semi. So I guess I'll go Baylor just on that gut instinct. but I can totally see Dayton being the upset here.
Yeah, I got to go with Baylor again. Dayton's path to get here is pretty damn rough. And you know, if something happens with that lineup where they only play 5-6 guys, you know, where Baylor has some other options, I that's why I looked at depth, because you know you never know when something's going to go wrong, and Dayton doesn't really have any recourse if something goes wrong. I got to go with Baylor. You guys can pull it out though for Dayton if you both go for it. Josh.
I'll give it a stab. I'm with Cam. I think it feels like a really even game, and it feels super close, competitive. The difference for me, I'm a big intangible guy. I'll give Dayton trying to pull off, you know, not having that 2020 tournament, and this team being really good, and not being. I mean, on balance, like it's not that much different from that 2020 team across the roster. So
Yeah.
I'll be an intangible guy, and I'll give Dayton the upset.
All right. What do you got, Drew? You got the final call on this one.
Oh, this one's tough. I've got a soft spot for both teams. Dayton kind of more long-standing. Baylor this year, I really like them. I'm going to take Baylor. Like Cam, I have a lot, and if not all, almost all my brackets, I have that North Carolina Baylor matchup. I think Baylor, again, kind of like you said, Rich, if you line up this team, I think they just have a little bit more outside of Deron Holmes. I mean, that guy is
Right.
an All-American, but I think Yves Missi can give him enough. He can make life hard enough to where Duran's not going to go in and have a 28-15 game.
Right.
You know, so I'll take Baylor to edge one out here. But this is an awesome game and good for mid-major basketball because Dayton's been so close. We've been so high on them over the years, but they just can't stay healthy. And if Malachi Smith was healthy and never got hurt, this Dayton team be even better. But I think they cap out of the Sweet 16.
All right. So now we have in the other matchup, we have North Carolina versus Grand Canyon. Cam, you're up.
I'll take another curb stomping with North Carolina, please.
I too say the Grand Canyon's run ends here in the Sweet 16. Josh?
Yeah, nothing to add there.
All right, so North Carolina moves on. So now we have a great matchup to get into the Final Four between North Carolina and Baylor. Drew, start us off.
I love North Carolina. Been very adamant about it. Similar to my point on UConn, where I think they have a guy that can fill every role that you need in a basketball game. I think North Carolina is probably the only other team that I feel that way about, truly. And I think that their path, especially given the bracket we've broken down, is a little bit easier. I think they're just as deep, if not a little bit deeper. I love Elliot Cadeau, that kid plays basketball the right way. On top of having a bunch of fifth-year seniors and juniors all roaming around, they're loaded, they're hungry, they're veterans. Give me North Carolina.
Yeah. Well, I'll just put my vote in right now. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a great game, but I just think North Carolina has more veteran presence and probably more ways to beat you than Baylor does. I think Baylor relies a lot on the outside shot. They don't really have a post presence like Baycott. So, all right, Cam, what do you say?
I just think this North Carolina team is so poised. Granted, they've lost a handful of close games, but the majority of these games, they're, even when it does come down to the wire, they end up pulling it out, and that hasn't really been the case for Baylor. Kind of the one thing that I could see pushing Baylor, on top would be, a freak game from Jacoby Walter.
Right.
The type of dude that could really go on a real hot streak in a tournament style. But give me North Carolina here.
All right. So North Carolina advances to the Final Four. So now we'll start off with Josh in the Midwest. And does anyone see that this is who's?
This is Purdue, and then they get Montana State or Grambling.
And did they play tonight or is that tomorrow?
That's tomorrow.
Okay. So we have Purdue versus the 16 unnamed seed yet. Anybody think Purdue's going to lose to 16? All right.
I'm kidding.
Uh,
Wouldn't be the
so-
first time.
no, it wouldn't be the first time. All right, now we have an interesting matchup, 8-9 matchup between Utah State and TCU. Where do we leave off? I think we left off.
I think Josh.
Yeah. So Drew,
Yeah.
what do you got? We got Utah State versus TCU. Do we know where this game is being played?
We do. This game is being played in. This game is being Indianapolis, I believe. Yeah, Indianapolis.
Okay. So what are you thinking?
This is another really good one that I feel like it's not going to get a lot of hype. I'm going to take Utah State. I feel like TCU's been one of those teams that's been kind of like close to being like, I don't know. I've given them kind of the benefit of the doubt in all of our pick'ems. They've been like okay, whereas Utah State won arguably the toughest conference just in terms of relative competition. So I'm going to take Utah State, but I don't really feel too confident either way. I think they're both good teams, so I'll just take the higher seed in this one, even though the higher seed's by one.
All right. All right. What are you thinking, Cameron?
I think you might just have a little bit of the best player aspect here for Utah State with Osabor. Hell of a name too, my goodness. But
It's a great name.
yeah, he's strong.
That's a good one.
Man, yeah, it's just TCU has just been such a meh team this year. I don't see them pulling this one out.
Wow. I do. I think TCU can run them. I think can outrun them. And Osabor, when Utah State lost in the Mountain West tournament, was clearly winded after just playing 2 games in a row. He's a big dude, but I don't know. I could just see TCU running him ragged. Yeah, but Utah State's a really good team, but I just have an inclination TCU's gonna know how to beat them. What do you think, Josh?
I like Utah State there. I feel like TCU's execution in the half court on offense isn't the best, and I feel like Utah State does a
That's
better
true.
job spacing. And if it comes down to a close possession game, I just don't trust. I don't trust TCU. I feel like Utah State, like Drew said, that conference is really good, and they didn't win it by accident. So
No.
it's a good basketball team. I like Utah State.
Okay. So does anyone like McNeese to lose to Gonzaga? All right, Josh.
Drew, I think
I
we got a cowboy tramp stamp for you after that one, bud.
Oh, Cam, they played Mississippi University for women in Champion Christian and Biblical Studies. There's no way Mark Few, who never loses in the first weekend of March, loses to these guys. Their best win was the first game of the season in like the first week of November.
How many games has McNeese lost this year? 3?
They've lost 3, yeah.
Yeah. Drew, I assume you're going with Gonzaga. I'll throw my 2 cents in. McNeese played a really easy schedule. Will Wade put together, a bunch of cast-offs, from other D1 teams like Shahada Wells, who's played really, really well.
He's been awesome.
But we know when Shahada Wells played up in for TCU, he was just basically, a reserve. So I just think McNeese is out of their realm here, and I too like Gonzaga. What do you think, Cam?
I mean, to me, it's not like Gonzaga's played a real hell of a schedule this year either. I don't know. I mean, it'd be a hell of a thing to see, the ultimate Cinderella team get upset in the first round by another ultimate Cinderella team. But my heart says McNeese State, so I'm going to go with McNeese State.
Wow, Josh, you own this. You own this, Josh.
It's bold, but I gotta go Gonzaga here, and kind of it's the Izzo magic, but it's the Mark Few thing. I don't think this is Gonzaga's best team by far that they've had in a long time, and I think it's a credit to what these players did to get to the tournament. they're getting by on willpower and the fact that they're tough basketball players, but it's not a great team. But I'll admit I watched McNeese play once this year just out of curiosity because they were like 28-1 at the point or whatever it was, and as much as I love to hype up teams and say they're great, I'm not convinced that they're a 31-3. This isn't Charleston last year or
Right.
one of these other teams that's like 31-3 and just dominant.
Right.
I don't see it with that team. So I'm taking Gonzaga.
I mean, they do have some guys that can play. I mean, there's no doubt about it that but if they were playing a team that was a little more of a mess as opposed to a team it's really on the upswing and has been improving all year, I might be tempted to take them because they certainly can compete at this level, at least for a game or two. But Gonzaga's just been playing too well of late to go against them. All right, so just the opposite we could say about Kansas. 4 seed against 13 seed Samford. Kansas, of course, they announced today Kevin McClure will be out for the entire tournament after kind of downplaying what he was going through. And also, Hunter Dickinson they say he's going to play, and he was supposed to, I believe, practice with some contact today. But as we know, with shoulder separations, they can be super touchy and pop out at any time. And the more they pop out, the more it happens. It's kind of something that snowballs. So who you got, Drew? Kansas or Samford?
I'm going to take Samford. And again, this is to me just the March Madness magic feeling of like, if even without McCullough, if Dickinson plays and is able to be at like 85, 90% capacity, he himself should be enough to lead this team through a game. But like, we saw how bad that they looked without both of them. We know that the bench is not deep. Their bench averages just under 12 points a game. Like, that's really tough. And it's like you just lost your best guy, a player of the year candidate. So do I think, Sanford's got this magical Cinderella, tank, like juice in the tank? Probably not. But sometimes in March, it's better to be lucky and get a good draw than it is to be good. And I'm not saying Sanford doesn't have talent, but
I think Sanford's got some talent.
yeah, I think, and I don't think Sanford's like this horrible, like, oh, like you're lucky to be here, congratulations, team. You won a really crappy conference, so I'm gonna take Sanford.
Yeah, I hear you, Cam.
Samford for me.
Yeah,
I just think it, and I'm just looking through some of the statistics, even just with what people have been picking. I'm shocked that Kansas is still so favored with the injuries, especially with McCullough. I think without McCullough, you really don't have a great option outside of Hunter Dickinson, at least not offensively. Lending to Samford being a really strong candidate for the upset. They're very efficient on the offensive end, and they have enough size to at least bang with Hunter Dickinson and Anchor.
They have a big guy named Anchor, who can shoot it some. He can bang. He can score inside. He can rebound, block some shots. They have Jermaine Marshall, who's been a really good, productive wing for them I think he's a super senior. And they have Rylan Jones, who used to start at point guard, got hurt last year, and Ashworth took over for him. But Rylan Jones was actually Utah's starting point guard, and Ashworth got that position because Jones got hurt last year. So this is not a team of nobodies, and I like Samford. All right, so now we have South Carolina versus Oregon, who had to win the Pac-12 tournament to get in, as they often seem to do. What do you think of Josh?
Yeah, I like Oregon here. I know South Carolina's had a good season, but Naftali Dante is a nice player. This Oregon team is kind of battle tested. They've been through injuries all year. That's a tough team. So I like Oregon coming through.
Drew?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Oregon here. I mean, I like Michi Johnson. I like BJ Mack. Like, I don't know. I just haven't really been on the South Carolina train. Oregon again, kind of like I said, NC State's hot at the right time, and I think has enough juice to get through a game here.
Cameron, your favorite team of all times, the South Carolina Gamecocks?
Man, Rich, I was thinking, you know, this has to be in terms of, season Cinderella stories, one of the wildest turnarounds I've ever seen. I think the last time I was actually on the college portion of the pod with you was when we were doing the SEC preview.
Yes, and you totally trust South Carolina.
Yeah, we spent a good 5 minutes laying into them for how rough of a year it was going to be.
You did. I told South Carolina fans to write letters to you.
Oh, yeah, maybe you're right. Well, I haven't received any yet, but I'm open to it because I was really wrong about this team. And I think the biggest thing is they've had a huge turnaround in terms of really what their coach has been able to implement. Last year's team didn't really run much of anything, and this year you have a super scrappy, competitive, like mean team. Yeah. I'm going with South Carolina for sure here.
Wow. I don't know how this team does it. I mean, I know how they do it. They kind of muck it up and there's a very good chance they could win. But I don't know. In terms of pure talent, Oregon's got them. I'm going to go with talent here, but I could, I could see it going the other way. All right, so we move Oregon on. So now we have Creighton versus Akron, the winners of the MAC. Anyone going to go against Baylor Shireman? All right, we'll move on, though. Their SID, certainly, I'd like to go against him. All right, moving on. We have Texas versus the play-in winner. And who won that lovely game tonight?
Colorado CSU slapped the hell out of Virginia. It was an embarrassment.
Wow. So now we know it's Texas versus Colorado State. What do you think, Josh?
I like the Rams in that one. I know this Texas team is good, but Isaiah Stevens is awesome. I love Nate Clifford. Dude is like a walking triple double. That Colorado State team is a lot of fun. I think they got a lot of weapons and can match athleticism with Texas. They can drive lanes, so I like them.
All right, Drew.
I'm going to take Texas. I think Texas. I do agree. Isaiah's awesome. Nate Clifford's awesome, but like Max Abmas can go bucket for bucket with a guy like Isaiah Stevens. And then you start getting down the list and you're like, you got Dylan Mitchell, who is an athlete.
Yeah, they have nobody. Colorado State has nobody like him.
Yeah, so
and Colorado State really doesn't have anybody like Dylan DeSue.
I was going to say Dylan DeSue next. So I agree with Josh in that I think Colorado State's been kind of, along with a lot of the Mountain West this year, a bit disrespected, and that Colorado State isn't gonna go in there. They're not gonna roll over. But I'm gonna take Texas. They've been a team that I've like consistently been telling people like they're good. Trust me, they're good. And they are. They just
have been able to get over the hump.
They've beaten they've beaten a lot of really good teams. They haven't beaten the great teams.
Yeah, they just don't string them together.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, they haven't beaten the Iowa States and the Houstons and the Baylors, but they have beaten all those teams that are like kind of that one tier below, and Colorado State's in that tier below. So I'll take Texas.
All right, what do you think of Cam?
Yeah, just looking at these two teams statistically, they're pretty damn similar. And actually, it might surprise you, but Colorado State has actually played a harder schedule, and has actually been more successful against top 25 teams than Texas has.
That does surprise me.
I'm gonna go Colorado State here. Isaiah Stevens is an absolute beast. Granted, Texas has Max Abmas. We've seen what he can do in the tournament, but I like the upset here. Also, it's the year of Colorado play-in teams, so if that means
Um,
anything to you, I don't know.
all right, so that's 2 votes for Colorado State. So I think that wraps it up for them. Just my opinion. I think Colorado State can't match up athletically to Texas. I just don't think it's close. That's why I like Texas. But based on our rules, we advance Colorado State. All right. Anyone think that Tennessee is going to lose to St. Pete's? I didn't think so. All right, so now we'll work our way back up. Now we have Tennessee versus Colorado State. And I'll start it off. Um, yeah, I don't see Tennessee losing at this spot. Cam's flashing. No,
I'm assuming
I mean,
Cam agrees. I do as well.
I picked Tennessee a preseason to be a Final Four team. So they still do have these lapses, even with Dalton Connect. So that scares the crap out of me, but I don't think it happens here. Josh?
I like realistically, I feel like I'm gonna go Colorado State. I feel like you just talked about the lapses. Tennessee, they can struggle to score. If they fall into a stretch where you're going 5-6 minutes without a bucket, Colorado State can put up some points. If they can get behind, get them playing a little frantic, I could see a path. And truthfully, I don't trust Tennessee this time of year. They haven't proven it.
Right.
Until they do. So
I get it. Yeah. Drew?
Give me Tennessee. They have the lapses, but Dalton Connect is, I mean, I know he didn't have the game in the SEC tournament that we were used to, but still he's one of the best insurance policies for an offense in the country. I'm taking Tennessee. I think Texas gets here anyways. I think Colorado State doesn't match up again great with this team. So I'm taking Tennessee.
Right. And Cameron, I assume you're going with your alma mater.
I'm just gonna sit here silently, Rich.
All right, so the next matchup we have will stay down here in the bottom of the West or Midwest and work our way up. We have Oregon versus Creighton. I'll start off. I don't, I wasn't convinced that Oregon can beat South Carolina. They're really still not at 100%. A lot of guys they lost 3 guys, similar to Houston, lost 3 guys for the year. So I think Creighton handles Oregon here, or South Carolina. I don't think it really matters. Cam?
Yeah, I think regardless of whether or not it's South Carolina or Oregon there, they can make it a really scrappy claw, just fight it out type of game. Traditionally, Creighton has been able to overcome that. I'll stick with Creighton.
All right. That's Josh, you in agreement?
yeah. I mean, Creighton, I think the path to beating them in the tournament is that they have an off shooting night or they have an off offensive night. But like you said, Cam, those type of teams, they're going to try to muck it up. And in that kind of game, Creighton does have enough offense to win that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Creighton has 3 great offensive weapons. And so, it just happened when they lost to Providence. Baylor Shireman had a rough night. Ashworth had a bad night, and Kalkbrenner didn't have a big night. So, yeah, but that's pretty rare for that to happen. All right, so we'll keep on moving up the line. We'll go back up to the top here. We got Purdue versus 8 seed Utah State.
I'm pretty comfortable with Purdue winning here.
Yeah.
I just think there are teams that just the sheer force that is Zach Edey is going to be enough to propel Purdue through. It might look sloppy as hell it might be a really close game, but I think, down the stretch, that size is going to leave an impact, especially against a team like Utah State or TCU.
Right. Josh?
Yeah, I can't see Purdue dropping that game. Offense is too efficient.
Yeah, I can't either. All right. How about we have 5 seed Gonzaga versus 13 seed Samford. I'll start us off. I think Samford can get by a wounded Kansas team. But as I said before, Gonzaga's playing really well. And they're not super deep, which is, like a typical Gonzaga team, but I still think they have enough to come away with the win versus Samford.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is I'm just not that big on that conference this year. Like, I'm not big on St. Mary's. I'm not big on Gonzaga.
Yeah.
I think that, like, ultimately, like, we have a little bit of bias in terms of looking at Gonzaga as this elite team that's hidden in maybe a lesser conference. And this year, I feel like in a lesser conference. I think, to me, they're more so fighting on the same playing field as a team like Samford this season. I'm going to take Samford here.
All right.
Personally.
Well, I know I can speak for who Drew's picking. For some reason, he hasn't come back right away. So, but I know Drew will pick the Zags for sure. So that leaves you, Josh. You have the deciding vote.
I actually think Samford's a better team.
Wow!
Straight up. No, I Bucky, the Buckyball thing is real. Like, I've seen this team a number of times throughout the year, and like their defense is no joke. If you're preparing for them
They
in
also
a
can
tournament
score.
setting,
They also can score like
that's in addition to all the other guys you mentioned. Another player they got, Jaden Campbell, is another guy that can put up buckets. That team is good. They just have dudes. They got guards. Jermaine Marshall, like you said, I love. He's athletic, can score. That's a fun team, and they can really wreak havoc on you defensively. And I think a team like Gonzaga that isn't equipped to score 90 a night necessarily anyways, I think they're in for a rough game there. I like Samford, I think, straight up.
All right, there we go. Drew's gonna have a heart attack. All right, so now down to 4 teams in this region. We got Purdue in Samford. And I'll start us off. I like Purdue. I don't think if they play Gonzaga's got a couple of big guys that can, maybe slow down Edie. Guys that are close to 7 feet, but yeah. And I think Purdue and Gonzaga played earlier this year, and I think Purdue handled them, and I think Purdue also beat them last year. So, but either way, I don't see anybody on any of these teams going to be able to slow down Edie. So I'm going with Purdue.
To your slow down Edie, I say speed him up. I'm gonna go Samford.
Samford can do that. Yeah. And that is the key to beating Purdue. It's really not stopping Edie, because you're not going to do that. That's not happening.
Possible.
What you do is you slow down those Purdue guards by applying pressure to them. That's how Wisconsin beat them. But even when Purdue loses, they lose by like 1 point or 2 points, or they barely lose. So I agree. I just don't know if anybody in this region has what it takes to beat Purdue until maybe we get to Tennessee or Creighton. But so that's our. But let's finish off with this: Samford or Purdue, Josh.
Man, you know what, Rich, you just now almost talked me into Samford with boy, you're right. Like, if you can get the guards for Purdue slowed down and get them in the half court and make them work through Edie, slow the game down. That Samford team is super efficient. They know how to defend. I mean, let's get wild with it. I like Samford there. You know what? I really like this Purdue team, but Stanford can ball. That team is for real. Yeah. And they get in there in a matchup with them. They can play with them. They can hang.
Do you realize we just put Stanford in the Elite 8?
Crazier things have happened.
I will say, I don't think this is one of those fluke, like, under, they came in out of nowhere. That team, I think, is a real basketball team.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I gotta say too, like honestly, this is a realistic picture of what March Madness has become in recent years. Maybe Samford, in terms of seeding, is pretty low, by past standards, but it's just getting weirder and weirder out here.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
Purdue,
if Fairleigh
we've said the
Dickinson
same
could beat
things about
Purdue,
Purdue when they lost last time around in
or
March
Fairleigh
Madness.
Dickinson, that's what I'm saying. If Fairleigh Dickinson can beat Purdue, then Samford certainly can, because they're a way better team, in my opinion. This year's version of Samford versus last year's version of FDU. So, all right. So now we have Creighton and Tennessee, the 2-3 matchup, to move on to the Elite Eight. I'll start us off. I keep on seeing the face of that SID. No, really, seriously.
Take your
No,
time,
obviously Tennessee, is the more physical team, is the deeper team. Man, this is tough. This is tough. I guess I'm going to go with Tennessee, because I picked them, to go to the Final Four, and one of the reasons was, the preseason, was because of Connect. I thought Connect would give them that extra push to take them to the next level. I don't think this Creighton team that should have probably been in the Final Four but stopped at the Elite Eight last year is as good as last year's team. So I'm going to go with Tennessee.
Yeah, spoiler alert, I am taking Tennessee. Just because we didn't really touch on it, this team does still have that choke it gene. But I honestly, as a Tennessee fan and somebody that wants to see them go deep, I was actually really almost excited to see that they lost in the SEC tournament, to kind of, that classic idea of get it out of your system now. I just think with the way that this team can play defense with the Rick Barnes style, they finally have somebody that can score the ball. And that's the one thing that this Tennessee program has missed for years. And I don't see anybody really beating them up until the Final Four.
All right. I agree. And we'll move them on, because we no longer need tiebreakers. All right. So now to get into the Final Four, we have Samford versus Tennessee. Who you got, Josh?
yeah, I feel like in that game I'd probably go Tennessee. I feel like, and I say that because had it been Tennessee. Tennessee. If Tennessee can beat a Creighton team, they can beat Samford. It's a team, you're athletic and can defend. You can score. If Samford gets past Purdue, you're not turning around on 2 days getting past Purdue and Tennessee. That's a tall order.
Yeah.
That's a tall order. As crazy as March has gotten, I don't think it's Samford's Final Four year. In that bracket, I think I'd probably take Tennessee.
Yeah, I gotta agree. What I'm going to be looking for is that Purdue Tennessee rematch, which was Maui, right? That was the championship in Maui.
It was a really close game in Maui. There were some pretty questionable calls both ways. Kind of one of those early season kind of sloppy games. But I will say too, when these two teams matched up, Purdue and Tennessee, that is earlier in the year, it was quite a bit before we kind of had this Dalton Connect show sort of take off. I think he had maybe 16 points in that game.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, it'd be a hell of a matchup. But if we're talking Samford here, I'll take Tennessee.
All right. So we're down to the Final Four, gentlemen, and people have dropped off the show left and right. We started with 5. We're down to 3 of us. So we have UConn versus North Carolina to advance to the championship. Who you have, Josh?
I'll take UConn there. I think the every advantage North Carolina would have against another team they play, they run into UConn's got the advantage on them, and it's just kind of that simple. I don't think Baycott. I mean, he can. It's not so much he can be neutralized, but you can't run your offense through him against UConn, and I think that's going to pose you put a way too much pressure on the guards to hit shots, and against UConn, if you're relying on shooting to beat you, good luck.
Yeah.
It's just too tough.
I agree. I like UConn as well. Cam, you have any different thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the things that I love about North Carolina, I love even more about UConn. I think these are two very poised teams, very veteran teams. They play with the right pace. They can beat you in multiple ways, right? They're not really like reliant on any one player. But I still like UConn's matchup with them at pretty much every position. So I think I struggle to see anybody on the board that can really, beat UConn except for maybe one team. We'll see.
All right. So now it's
No,
getting
thank you,
interesting. So we move UConn into the final game, and now we have 3-seed Kentucky versus 2-seed Tennessee in an SEC matchup, which the two teams have already met twice. And I believe, if I have this right, I believe each one on the other's home court. Did they not, Cam?
Sorry, Rich, I didn't hear your question.
I think
My own word.
the two times where Tennessee and Kentucky met this year, I think the visiting team won each time.
No. So Tennessee lost in Rupp at the end of the season.
Oh, okay. All right.
But it was by 4. It was like a 85 to 80 type of game or something like that. I can't remember the exact final.
Right. I think Connect went
crazy, for the most part,
crazy in that game.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
All right. So
yeah, I mean, this is it's a classic rivalry matchup. And it's ultimately a coin flip in my mind between these two teams. Like every time they match up, it's pretty much a coin flip. But since Rick Barnes has been in Knoxville, Tennessee is, more or less been pretty dominant in that rivalry, if I would put it that way. At least in regular season play. So I'll take Tennessee personally.
What do you think of Josh?
Well, it does feel like a coin flip if that, and boy, would that be fun. I feel like Reeves is probably the difference for Kentucky there. I like his game. I feel like it's a coin flip, and if I got to pick somebody to hit a big shot out of everyone on the floor for those two teams, I'd probably take Reeves. So that's why I'd go Kentucky, but it feels like a coin flip.
For a big shot, if it came down to one shot, I'd want Connect taking it myself, but I can't get. Tennessee's better defensive team. The more physical team and the more experienced team. And Kentucky is more talented than any other team in pure talent, but it's all very young. Oh my gosh, this is tough. I'm gonna, yeah.
Who do you give the coaching edge to?
I don't know, because Tennessee goes in these droughts, and Calipari never seems to know what to do with his lineups, and I'm gonna go with Tennessee by a hair, by the slightest of hairs. All right. So now we got our championship game. I'll start us off there. We have UConn versus Tennessee, solely based on the reason why I don't even know who's going to win between Kentucky and Tennessee. I'm going to say UConn, but more so, I just think UConn's the best team in basketball. I mean, Kentucky probably could be, but they need like another year together. And so it's just UConn has all the elements. Could they lose to a Tennessee or a Kentucky? Yeah, but I got to go with UConn. Cameron?
Yeah, I think objectively, UConn is, I think, clear and away the best team in the nation. Have we always seen that team win the championship? No. If I was a betting man, it would probably be one of these two teams that I would bet on. And it probably wouldn't be Tennessee. I would, preferably I would bet on UConn. I think if I'm looking at matchups, which ultimately is what it comes down to in these really crazy games, like the national championship game, Tennessee struggles with size. It's a team that is almost entirely dependent on Jonas Adu to defend the 5 position.
Right.
And I think that's a really big problem against Klingon, who can quickly get Adu into some sort of foul trouble.
The other thing that's wrong with Tennessee is they don't really have a go-to post scorer. I mean, Adu's not bad, but he's not Grant Williams,
Yeah, no. And I think, if anything, it might be the strength of this Tennessee team that they're not reliant on a post scorer, because I don't know
but
if that
wouldn't that be
work in their
dangerous to
favor.
mix a post score with Connect?
Yeah, I think Adu does the things that they need. He gets enough. He's productive enough. He's had quite a few 19-plus point games this season. So, but I still don't think, ultimately they're going to have enough size to compete with somebody like Klingon in the middle. Maybe they can lock down the perimeter and make it hard for UConn's guards. But I think, ultimately, I would say UConn is probably going to win. But I'm still going to take Tennessee, because this is one of the few times you will ever see me be a homer. I actually legitimately believe in this Tennessee team. And I mean, last year, I'm pretty sure I had us out in maybe the second round. So take my word, I legitimately believe in this Tennessee team. So I'm going to take them.
So it's
Feel
1-1.
free to take UConn.
1-1 right now, Drew. We're down to the championship game of UConn, Tennessee. Who you got?
Oh, damn. I don't know what happened. It said I was in the lobby for like 15 minutes. I don't know why.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's all good. It's all good.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
it's all good. Do we have UConn, Tennessee?
Mm-hmm.
So I took Tennessee to also get there. I took Tennessee personally versus North Carolina. But you said it's 2-2 or 2-1?
It's 1-1. I went
1-1.
with Connecticut. Cam went with Tennessee. And we got 2 votes left.
Oh. Part of the reason I went with North Carolina is because of how difficult it is to do this back-to-back thing. Seriously, it's such an hard precedent. I took Tennessee to get there. And I would have taken North Carolina to win it personally. But because we have UConn in there, I'm gonna go with Tennessee.
Wow.
It's tough. I like North. To be honest, I personally like UConn more than Tennessee. That's why I had North Carolina being UConn. I just think this back-to-back thing is tough, and I think UConn has to go through such a gauntlet that to cap it off against a Tennessee team that I think can match up well enough with them. Klingon's an X factor because he's just his size alone, but like they have guards, they can score. Tennessee does defend. Tennessee will get in there and rebound. This is mostly it's so hard to win back to back. But I do have Tennessee getting there as well, so I'll go with the Vols. But it's tough.
What do you think, Josh?
I really appreciate what Cam said. The fact that you got that kind of belief in this team, that's something that counts for a lot. I mean, we all know, like, you don't get those kind of teams every now and again, right? Like, so that counts for something. And like Drew said, it's really hard to repeat. You don't see teams do it. this UConn team is built to do it. I think that's what their mission is. They're trying to set a legacy thing. It means something, and I say that because if this team wasn't equipped for it, they could have lost. There was no reason they needed to run the Big East. There was no needed they for them to run the tournament. Them going through that was sending a message. I think this team is on a mission. I think the whole season this year, all that matters to them is putting that other trophy up, and I think they haven't fallen short yet. They're the defending champs. Until someone knocks them off, I'm just not going to bet against them. I think UConn wins this year.
All righty. So it's 2-2, and based on our rules, the higher number seed wins. So that means Tennessee wins the national championship. We need a total. By the way, this card will be in our group pool that we're doing among HP people, and it will be under Mookie's name. Our collective bracket, like last year, will be under Mookie's name. Mookie, by the way, Josh, our mascot, my dog Mookie is our mascot. So we need
what kind of dog?
He's half Stafford Terrier, pit bullish. You know, they're very similar, and also Great Pyrenees. So he's actually a very odd dog, and he's sound asleep, or I get him to come over. All right, so we need a tiebreaker. I'm thinking a UConn Kentucky matchup would probably be in the high 80s. I'm thinking a UConn Tennessee matchup is probably in the mid 70s. What are you guys thinking?
I'm thinking like a 145 if we're gonna just go total points. I think that's kind of a safe bet.
I was thinking 150. Any other thoughts?
I think the team that probably pulls it out gets to 80.
Okay.
Right. Like I think regardless.
Okay, so why don't we go in so you're thinking like 155, I'm thinking 150, Drew's thinking 145. So
Yeah, I'd go on the lower end. I feel like 150
All right,
I'm good with a
150.
150. I think I'm good with 150.
All right, we'll submit it. It's going to be in there under Mookie's. No, wait. Oh, it's going to ask me all kinds of other questions. But anyway, so we're in there, and if our collective pool wins, we'll share it amongst ourselves. So evenly, though Caleb only gets we get let's see, we'll have to figure it out because Caleb only lasted half the show, so we're gonna have to come up with something here.
Half a share. He gets half a share in the Tennessee Power Tea tramp stamp. That's what he gets.
If he gets a Tennessee tea tramp stamp, he can have my share. He can keep if that man gets a Tennessee tea tattooed on his ass, he can have my share.
I second that. All right, so we're going to wrap it up now, folks. We're going to be putting everyone's picks from the show, individual picks, our final four picks. We're also making a couple of sleeper picks. We're going to have a little contest amongst ourselves, but you'll be able to check that out. We'll also be posting this bracket that we just picked on the website. And also our Cliff Dixon is writing an article about some interesting things as he's researched about the tournament and some of his thoughts. He was going to join us today, but he had to cancel last minute. So that's it for this week, gentlemen. Next week we'll be back and talking about the first round or the first two rounds, actually. Final thoughts?
Pitch and Cannon Carlisle, but Maxine Reyno has officially entered the portal.
Yeah, somebody else. Oh, Stojakovic did too.
Yeah, so Stojakovic and Carlisle went in yesterday, and it looks like the French big man Reyno will be joining them.
Yeah,
So
well, I mean, we were talking about this during the week when I was at the Big East tournament with Haas getting fired. Stanford had 4 players on our top 200 draft board, and I mean, that's usually reserved for the North Carolinas and the Dukes and stuff like that. And he, in my opinion, had a ton of talent and couldn't do anything with it.
Had Harrison Ingram last year. Had Cormac Ryan had Cormac Ryan years ago, but had him too.
Right. Yeah. Just Just not a good coach. Might be a nice guy, but not a great coach. All right. Any more final thoughts before we say goodnight, gentlemen? All right. So it was nice having you, Josh. Cam, it was great.
Fun hanging out with y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good having you.
Great seeing you again, Cam. We need to do this more often. And Drew, thank you so much for always being there. And good luck to your team. When's the first games? Thursday?
So we play Friday.
Okay.
We got out early just because we had some like we have coaching meeting, trainer meeting. We have like some like the support, like the staff has to go and like do all the meetings and stuff. So I had mine yesterday. Thankfully I got to do mine on Zoom. We didn't have to get out too early, but we play on Friday. And then in theory could be here through the next couple of days when we win. Move on to the 8, win that, go to the 4, win that bad boy, and go get a national championship. Sounds like a pretty good couple of days to me.
You might be in the middle of America for a while.
We're literally on. So we are so on the border that we're staying in Nebraska. Technically, the gym is on the other side of like an overpass, and that's in Iowa. So we are like right on the border. So.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So that wraps it up, folks. We'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Right on,
Easy.
Josh.
Go get some sleep, Drew. He was tired.
Yeah, you look
Sleepers for the week. This is March. We sleep in May.